Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range. Hey, it's Shan here. This week I speak with Justin Lockjaw van Heerden. Justin is the Australian Featherweight champion under the Eternal MMA promotion, which is the biggest promotion in the country. Justin is an interesting dude. He's a co-host of his own podcast. He's also a journalist, has a degree in journalism. He's a father, and this week, like a lot of my episodes, we don't really talk that much about fighting. We more talk about his journey to where he is now in life and where he wants to go from here. It's a real lesson in, conceiving a dream and understanding what needs to be put in place in order to realise that dream. Commitment, dedication, sacrifice, overcoming adversity. Justin was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, post-apartheid, and talks about that experience growing up and the challenges that him and his family faced living in that country and the reasons why they wanted to move to Australia. He actually tells a story about being one of the only white children at his school and, a form of, reverse racism and discrimination, being a minority, and experiencing that, and then moving to Australia as a migrant and the bullying that he experienced at schools here, coming over as a new Australian. So it's really great to get that perspective. Justin will probably be the last fighter I have on the show for a while. I've just been really lucky to have access to these amazing guys and girls, just from training at Freestyle Fighting Gym in Wollongong here, and there's a lot going on in February in the fight world. Both UFC and Australian promotions, and a lot of the fighters there have big title fights coming up, and just been such a rad energy to be around. It's really inspiring. So yeah, that's about it really. I'm excited for the show. It's about 3 hours actually. I think you'll like this episode. He's a great talker. Anyway, enjoy the episode, and as always, I'm doing it for the kids. All right, you. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks.
Yeah, good to be you, man.
Whoa.
Dude, I'm
Submissive donut lifestyle. 3, 2, 1. Alright, let's do this. Dude, there we go. I think we're good. We're good. Justin van Heerden. Is that the best way to say it?
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to say it.
It is, man. I get it. Is that a South African background name?
Yeah, Dutch.
Wow. You grew up in South Africa?
Yeah, so born in Johannesburg. Born in Johannesburg, grew up in South Africa, moved away to America, moved back to South Africa, and then ended up in Australia.
Nice, dude. Wow. What a journey with your family.
Yeah. So my dad, he's a electrical fitter mechanic by trade, so was always, his job's given him the opportunity to go all over the world.
Yeah.
And work at all these crazy locations all around the world. And mum's a lawyer, so
okay.
There's never really been a struggle for either of them to take themselves somewhere, base themselves somewhere, and have to struggle with finding a suitable way to generate money.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, I think that's sort of what stemmed the moves all over the world and to all these different places.
Do they ever discuss the reasons they chose Australia?
Yeah, so ending up in Australia, because it was kind of, being that we lived in America, so it was kind of like, okay, America was going to be the go-to again. But then I think they settled on Australia because we had some family live here. We had some family in New Zealand, so it was kind of like, okay, the quality of life just seemed, really good. So I think that factored in the decision. But regardless, when we decided, we moved here 2008, I believe.
Yeah, right.
2008, around then. So, I think the main reason was the safety of being in somewhere like Australia, because South Africa is obviously not the place it was when I was like a little kid growing up there. Yeah. It's obviously, changed a fair bit, and it's just not a safe place to live. The quality of life's, not the same. Like, for the most part, when you're living there, I mean, it's like anything. It's good and it's incredible and it's a beautiful place and the people are great. But, it's no secret that the crime there, the dangers that are there, they're just, they're always present. And with my mum's line of work, because at the time she was a criminal law prosecutor. She worked in
Johannesburg.
Then it got to the point where, with the people that she was prosecuting and dealing with, they threatened to, they knew my brother and I's schedule at school. They made sort of threats about stuff like that. So I think it became a no-brainer for my parents to go, we need to just leave. So
wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously growing up in South Africa is like kind of, had a significant impact in shaping who I am as a sort of a person and, in and out of my fighting sort of career. But for the most part, it's like, I don't know, it's also sort of a blessing that, I'm here in Australia and have the quality of life that I have. And, I'm in the position I am now. Like, I flip-flop back and forth thinking about my childhood and how I grew up and the sort of early things I faced in my childhood that kind of, I guess, shaped why I ended up finding fighting as my career and my passion and the thing that I'm sort of pursuing. And then I think about, like, I fast forward to now and I go, I'm 28, I'm a father, I live in what I consider to be, the best country in the world and in one of the most beautiful places in the world, so, and I'm just kind of like, okay, this isn't too bad, because it was like a roll of the dice. Like, I'm well aware and I'm self-aware enough that if we never left South Africa, the chances of me seeing my 21st birthday probably would be significantly low.
I've heard that. Statistically, it has the highest murder rate in the world, Johannesburg, I've heard.
Yeah, so I think at one stage, I'm not sure about now, like the updated statistics, but I know at one stage more people died a day in Johannesburg than in Iraq, and Iraq's a war zone.
Insane,
so
dude.
That's like, should give people a realistic sort of understanding of, what it's like there. I mean, the more so when I sit back and think about it, like the day that, so what happened was my dad got offered a job with a company here in North Queensland, in Mackay in North Queensland, and he moved over and was here for like a year.
How old were you at the time?
I was like 13.
Okay.
Yeah, so my dad moved here for a year and then was based here for a year working before they, like the company that he worked for sponsored like and helped the process of moving my mum and my older brother and myself over here. So obviously, like the day that, I think it was like a Thursday arvo, Friday morning, mum's like, all right, Monday morning, Monday next week, we're going to Australia. And I was like,
damn.
I was ready. I was packed. I was ready. I was keen. My brother, he was at, he's 7 years older than me. So he was in high school, he's obviously got his friends and his girlfriend at the time and stuff like that. So for him, I think the transition and preparing yourself to move to Australia was a lot harder. And I think he struggled a fair bit. He was here for, like he actually went back to South Africa for a little period after being here for like a year.
Right.
He was like, he missed it that much and wanted to see the people and wanted to see his friends. And it's, he's older, so it was a bit different. But even then, I think he went back, he realised, this isn't the place where I need to be, and then came straight back.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the day we actually left to go to the airport, we were like driving to the airport, and I'll never forget it. We were on our way to the airport, we're on the motorway, and we're just, we're on our way to the airport. We're going to go to Australia. I'm going to get to see my dad again, and we're going to, be based in this, sort of beautiful country, and sort of start this new life and this new adventure. And then, a car pulled up next to us on the motorway, like came into the lane next to us, and then there was like 4 or 5 guys in the car, and they all pulled guns and were flagging us off the road, trying to get us to pull over.
I've heard this.
So we, obviously my family that was driving us to the airport at the time were just hooked it, obviously just kept going, and we, that was sort of the end of that. And I was like, just remember thinking, even then as like a kid, like a teenager, I was just thinking like, man, I can't wait to get out of this place. Like, if this is the stuff you have to deal with, like, and this is the what's going to be like the life experience that you have to deal with, I was like, nah.
So what'd you do? They're trying to pull you over, so and you just kept driving.
We you're like speeding down the motorway, like trying to get away, and then but then you have to think about, obviously now as I'm older, I can think about it, I can sort of understand it a bit more, but then you just know that we got away, but someone else probably didn't.
Right.
So you're like, So but knowing that I was going to the airport and I was going to get on a plane and probably never see that place again, I was probably, I guess, even then I was kind of happy enough and self-aware enough to go, this is the best thing for me. We did go back in 2009, I believe. My parents have gone back a few times, but I went back with like my brother and mum and dad in 2009 to see family and, go back and sort of visit. And it was cool and everything, but I just, from the second I got there, I was there, like the first couple of days was cool, and seeing your family and that and the people you care about, that's cool. But just being there, I was kind of like, man, I don't want to be here. I want to go back. I just want to go home. And that was a big thing for me when I was like, I want to go home, meaning like Australia. Like I want to come back here. And since then I haven't gone back. Like I'll probably go back sometime this year because most of my family's moved away. Like they're all overseas and stuff. But, I've got my mum's mum, so my grandma's still there. She still lives there and she's getting on a bit now. She's, fairly older now. So my brother and I had this conversation. It's like probably like this time to go back like that one last time, kind of go see her, see some other friends and that we have there, and then kind of just, I guess, say that last goodbye, I guess, in a way, to the country, obviously to my grandma, because she's getting a bit older, so the chances of us getting over there again is probably going to be slim. But
so you don't feel like you've got full closure yet with that place?
Yeah, I just think I need to go back like one more time, see my grandma, see some some other friends and family that are there, and then kind of just have that last sort of I guess a little bit of time there to go okay, and then just I'll never go back after that. I don't think I'll ever go back.
It's intense, dude.
Which is kind of weird because like it'd be cool to sort of be able to go there and take my daughter there and be like, okay, well this is this is where your dad grew up. This is take her around and show her that sort of thing, because it is a beautiful country and there is so much to see. And I think for the most part, if you go there as a tourist and you're doing the touristy things and everything, it's great and it's fine, and you're not really going to be exposed to the other side of things that sort of happens there. But for me, knowing what I know and growing up there and understanding what it is really like, it's just kind of like it's just left a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
So it's not really a place that I even think about that think about too much anymore.
Really?
Like it's out of sight, out of mind, which is weird because it's.
How obvious is the segregation of the races there?
So that's a thing that people, obviously everyone knows about apartheid and everyone knows that like it was pretty rough back in the day. Like obviously everything was separate and it was an unfavourable situation for anyone. Like nobody wants to live like that. Nobody wants to see that happen. But what people don't get is, I guess for the most part, when Nelson Mandela became president and the country kind of did, it was like he united the country, but then once he left office and it flipped completely in the other direction. So all the stuff that you see with apartheid and stuff like that, where black people and black South Africans and stuff like that, were made to sort of they had a sort of, I guess, a worse quality of life, and they were kind of, things were separated from, everything was separated and made more difficult and stuff like that. It's kind of flipped the other way now.
Right.
Which is a weird thing to say, and kind of like, it's probably be hard for people to understand.
In your opinion, why?
I think it's because for so many years of, there not being equality, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
It's kind of like to make up for that or to try and, I guess, remedy it. They've gone, well, okay, we need to take all these things back and disperse them to sort of, the other way. So it's like, it feels, I think it's so, and whether that's like the right thing to do or whether that's the right approach. And that's, I don't know. I don't know how to run a country. I don't know how to fix years of oppression. But what's actually, what's happened is like it's kind of caused like the complete flip the other way. And, like with, and South Africa as a country now is just suffering as a whole. Like, there's weird situations, like there's things called load sharing and that, where periodically they'll just turn the power off to certain sections of the country so that they could power other sections of the country.
Oh
so
my God.
You don't have, like a lot of the time people don't have power for a certain amount of time.
Is it because there's not enough power to go around?
Yeah.
So let me guess, it's the poor neighbourhoods that get turned off.
100%. And so
wow,
there's stuff like that. There's like in Zimbabwe now, which is kind of the, I guess.
Yeah, which part were you from?
So I'm in South Africa, so in Johannesburg, and Zimbabwe's
Johannesburg.
like
Oh, sorry, you're
And
Johannesburg, yeah.
Zimbabwe's obviously the neighbouring country, and it's sort of, I always like to tell people, like Zimbabwe, if you look at it, it's like it's a way to tell the future, like for South Africa, because it's a similar situation. So the same thing happened, where it was like years of, you know, separation and stuff like that. It flip flopped and went the other way. But now, you know, obviously it went like real bad in Zimbabwe because, you know, they went around, they took like the farms of people, they killed people, it went like completely the opposite way. A lot of people got out of the country, but now they're actually, you know, as a nation, that country is like starving because they don't have the resources and they don't have the stuff they need to be able to, you know, continue to produce food and do all these things. And they're actually to a point now where they're trying to coax expats back to the country to try and like sort of build it
help
up again.
the economy again.
And people are just like, no way. Like, why? Like people try to kill my family. Why would I move back to this country? And I guess South Africa's sort of trending in the same way. Like all the educated people and all the people that, you know, that are like, that have trades and get university degrees and stuff like that, like they just leave the country. I don't really, I think the percentage of people that are actually like base themselves in South Africa and, you know, utilize the skills and stuff that they have and, you know, is very, very small. I think for the most part, people just get their degree, get their qualifications, and then they just go, okay, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go and base myself somewhere else.
Yeah. I'm
going to have a better quality of life. I'm going to earn lots of money. And my family and friends and people that I do have, you know, back in South Africa or wherever in Africa, they're going to be able to have a better quality of life, even though they're staying there. Because I'm going to, you know, if you're earning Australian dollar or euro or something like that, and you're sending money back to South Africa, like it's like a 10 to 1, 11 to 1, 12 to 1 conversion rate. So, you know, your people your family, your friends and people that are based there, they're going to, you know, have a great quality of life. So all these things that we're talking about are probably not going to affect them. Where, you know, for the everyday people, you know, everyone else sort of living in the country, and that it's a hard sort of way to sort of take your day by day and live your life.
Oh yeah, like as a kid, being probably uneducated about the political and social climate of where you were growing up, you know, were your initial impressions of, you know, black South Africans or Africans in general just one of, I guess, fear, hatred, anger, and until you became educated?
So my childhood, like growing up and going to school, you know, my experience was just, I guess, a highly negative one in the sense that, and so if, like I always try and tell people, if I sat here in this chair today and I was like, I just disliked, you know, black South Africans or black people in general and stuff like that, and I tell someone, you know, about how I grew up, they could make the link and go, no, it's not justified, but they could probably not a good thing. You don't ever want to be in a situation where you're trying to justify racism, which I'm not. But people could probably listen to that and go, oh, I can understand someone's, like this guy's experience that he had and why that would shape him to be that way. But thankfully, you know, my parents have, you know, the way my parents, you know, raised us and with the way I grew up and, you know, the people I was sort of surrounded with in my family and stuff like that, and being able to go overseas and stuff like that, that kind of, you know, shaped things a different way. And you kind of, you learn that the way that people are and the way that people treat people, you know, doesn't speak for a collective group.
Interesting.
So like when I grew up, so going to school in South Africa for me was a weird situation because obviously people know about how it was during apartheid and they know about segregation, and obviously there was racism was, you know, a thing that existed. But I think it's a weird thing to say, but I think I experienced like a reverse of that. So I was in a school, my primary school that I was attending in South Africa, I was one of 4 white kids.
Gotcha.
In the entire school.
Wow.
So from the day that I got there, I got picked on just because I was white.
Wow. Okay.
So I'd go to school and pretty much every day or nearly or every second day, my parents would get a phone call. We need you to come pick up Justin, or he's had another fight, or he's, you know, there's something that's happened. And it was just because I think even then I knew, I was like, look, I can't, like in a small way, I was like, I can't think that everyone just because I'm being picked on and, you know, singled out and experiencing these things, I can't then look at a collective group of people and go, oh, well, everyone's just like that. Because that's not, you know, that'd be silly of me. I had a small understanding of that, but as I got older and looking back now, I'm like, I can really break that down and go, okay, you know, there's just bad people, there's bad eggs in every sort of basket that you get or whatever, if that's sort of what you want to say. And growing up, you know, I had black friends, you know, I had friends of all races, because South Africa's a multicultural country.
Yeah.
Like there's pretty much, you know, every race of human being you can think of, you can find South Africa, and it is for the most part a united country, and people are great. But, you know, that through school and through my childhood, I was just exposed to just like the opposite end of something that I learnt about of how the country was, but I was experiencing in a small way the opposite of that. So it was a weird thing to experience, like, you know, being picked on just because I was like one of 4 white kids in a school that, you know, it was kind of like, it was a weird setup. You'd go to school, I'd try and just go through my day, just hang out with my friends, do my classes and stuff like that. And it even stemmed even further than that, where even my teachers were, like, in a sense, picking on me and bullying me and stuff like that. Like, I was in...
So that's very interesting perspective, man.
Yeah, so I was in grade 4 or 5, and I remember this. I was asked to go to the bathroom in one of my classes, and the teacher was like, no, like, sit down, you're not going to the bathroom. And I was like, okay. And I really needed to go to the bathroom. And it got to the point where I was, like, busting to go to the bathroom, and she wouldn't let me, to where I had to, like, do something where I was, like, doing like a speech or something where I was like, I had to, like, write something on the board. And, you know, this might be crazy for people, but we had chalkboards. So,
dude, hey, listen, I've been around long enough to know chalkboards, man.
So I was writing something on the chalkboard, I think, or something like that, and I ended up, like, you know, peeing on myself in front of the whole class.
Oh, man.
And that was, like, obviously, you know, nobody needs to do that. Like, that's an embarrassing
That's an
thing.
Experience that's going to stay with you.
Yeah, I'll never forget that for as long as I live. And my mum, obviously, because I went home and I told my mum and dad, and my mum went to the school and, you know, handled it, and obviously, you know, but that's the kind of stuff that shapes you and kind of affects you later on in life.
Dude, so much of the stuff that happens in your childhood can shape and affect your adulthood. That's 100%. The biggest thing I've learned in my life. But I actually really identify with what you're saying, because I experienced it at a very low level in the area that I grew up in with local Indigenous people, at a very low level. And, you know, when I was young, schools weren't educating us about the history of our country and what actually happened. We weren't told. You know, we were told about the white settlers, but there was never any reference to, you know, the atrocities that came along with that, and that were perpetrated on the Indigenous people of the land. So as a young person, I mean, I was beat up by Aboriginal people. I was, you know, I'd be walking down the street and I'd just get called a white cunt for no reason. You know, I'd see, you know, drunk Aboriginals, and I was clueless as to why. All I knew was, okay, I'm scared of those people. I'm going to stay away from them. And, you know, that was it through my childhood and teens. But I wasn't really, you know, as I got older and actually was educated, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, when I was younger, these people were the children of the stolen generation. So that pain and that hurt, it's generational. You know. So were you educated in your school about the history of the country?
Yes, and but not like, you know, yes and no, but my parents were always pretty, like, my dad is, you know, he's someone that's always reading, always learning things, always studying things, always, you know, he's watching stuff, listening to stuff, reading stuff. He's just interested in knowing about everything. So, and my mum too, obviously, and like they're both sort of educated, and my mum's obviously a lawyer, so I always was exposed to stuff like that. Like, they'd always talk to us about everything and explain things to us. Like, my mum would say to me, like, I'd wake up in the morning when I was like a little kid, and she'd like wake up super early, and I'd go into the lounge room and I'd turn on the TV, and she would come in to start getting ready to go, like to get us ready for school and then get herself ready for work. And I'd be watching like the news.
Right.
I wouldn't be watching cartoons or the Wiggles or something. I'd be watching the news.
Okay.
And then I would like tell my mum as a little kid, like I'd tell her, oh, this happened here and this happened here and this happened here. And mum was like, what are you talking about? And then she'd get to work and people would be like, oh, did you hear about what happened in blah, blah, blah. And my mum's like, that's so weird for like a little kid to, you know, fixate on something like that and go, okay, that's what I wanted to watch is like a little, like I'd get up in the morning, I'd watch the news. That's just what I did. It's just a weird thing to do, but that's what I did. But I mean, I just think I was always interested in wanting to know about anything that's happening in the world and, you know, understanding that where I live is one little place and it's not the whole world. It doesn't shape every other person's experience and I don't know about what's going on in other parts of the world.
And you discovered that. Yeah.
Wow. And then I think that opened my eyes a bit, even when I was going through this time at school where I was like getting into fights and having to stand up for myself and doing all these things. I think that that was a big factor in, I guess, wanting to know about other places and knowing other cultures and other experiences, because then I could understand like, oh, okay, this isn't like an individualized thing. I'm not being picked on or targeted or like for myself as an individual. It's just based on a collective experience that people have gone through, and it's a difficult thing to try and process. So it's, you know, like I guarantee if I sat down with each individual person, I wouldn't, you know, I'd be able to talk to them, I'd be able to hang out with them, and we'd be fine. And it'd be great, and you'd probably be friends. Because like I said, I had friends of all different sort of nationalities growing up. But I think the biggest flip in my perception, and probably what shaped me in not becoming someone that was sort of hateful towards anyone of any race or like carrying any sort of animosity based on what I was experiencing, was when I started playing sport.
Gotcha.
So once I started doing all sorts of sport, and once you're sort of going through a collective difficult thing, doesn't matter what sport it is, once you're going through something difficult with people alongside you, you're going to go, okay, you know, you're going to build those bonds and you're going to build those sort of perceptions and go, okay, you know, really at the end of the day, we'll come down to it. Like, it's the same for all of us right now. Like, this sucks for everyone. Like, we're all running around an oval right now and it sucks and it's hot and it's annoying and it doesn't matter. It's not like, you know, this, like, it's not because someone's got, like, I'm not sitting there going, oh, well, I have white parents, that dude's got Indian parents, but this is easier for him. It sucks for everyone. You know what I mean? I think that's the cool thing about sport. It kind of humbles you a bit. So
yes.
I think once I started doing sport as a kid, so, you know, like I started with gymnastics and karate, you know, wrestling.
How old?
Like 5, like around then, like very, very early on. And then, you know, all the way through, I did pretty much every sport possible. I was trying to guide my way to do sort of different sports. I did cross country. I was on the athletics team. I played cricket. I played basketball. I did hockey, especially when I came to Australia. Like, obviously, I played rugby union growing up because South Africa, you know, rugby union's massive.
Obsessed.
So I played, so this is a weird sort of concept, but I was at a school, Robertson Primary in Johannesburg, and up the road from us was an Afrikaans school, like a full Afrikaans school, where, you know, so like the classes are still taught in Afrikaans. Like,
can you speak any Afrikaans?
Yeah, fluent.
I was going to say.
So I played rugby for the Afrikaans school, and then I was already being sort of scouted, and like to be honest, if I stayed in South Africa, my pathway was pretty well planned out. I was already gonna go to, like, I was gonna play rugby. I was playing rugby for the Tyres, the Afrikaans primary school, but I was already being scouted for the high school that my brother attended. So I would have pretty much played rugby through high school. I probably would have got a rugby scholarship for uni. I would have gone to uni. I would have played rugby, and then I would have probably ended up, you know, playing in the Super Rugby, and then obviously would look towards playing for the Springboks. And
that would have been your path.
That's probably what would have happened 100%.
Let me guess.
100%.
Winger.
No, I played flanker as a kid, like all the way through up until I moved here. Then I started playing in the backs, and that's when I kind of realised, like, oh, there's some big people that play in these front row positions. Like, I have no business being here. But, you know, then moving to Australia, it was kind of like, I remember coming here, I got to, you know, my first day of school, before we, you know, started school, we went in, sat down with the principal, and then my mum was like, all right, well, you know, he's very sporty. He's played every sport, does sport. He played rugby, and then we're in North Queensland. And I remember, like, the principal just being like, we don't play rugby union up here. We play rugby league. And then I'm like, what's rugby league? And then I have to like I have to learn what rugby league is. And I was like, this isn't that bad.
This is easy.
I was like, we get a break. This is cool. Like, so I started playing rugby and like playing league.
Did you find league heaps like a lot easier?
Heaps easier.
Yeah.
Heaps easier in terms of, because it's a lot, and it's, but also a lot more fun. Which is a weird thing to say because obviously growing up, rugby's like religion in South Africa. But it was also a lot more fun as well. And then so I started playing rugby league. Same thing, athletics, cross country, basketball, hockey, which was kind of weird. I never thought I'd ever see myself trying hockey or something like that. But I jumped in, tried hockey, liked it, played AFL. Another sport where if you'd have told me about it as like before I got here, I'd be like, I don't understand what you're saying to me right now. But
it's a great sport, AFL,
I love it,
man.
I love it.
Have you ever been to a live game, like a
Not yet,
Swans
but people
game?
tell me it's incredible.
It's still probably my favourite team sport to watch live.
I can see that.
Like, there's a lot goes on behind the play as well, in the marking and stuff. It's very strategic and it's good. Anyway,
I want to go for sure. Like, and then so coming here doing like all sorts of sport, and then I was kind of the same sort of thing. The pathway kind of looked like it was going to trend the same way. Like I was playing rugby league. I started high school, and then I was in the league academy at high school, and I was playing club footy outside of school, and I was kind of like, okay, you're based in North Queensland, you're in Mackay, like it's like the same thing. It's like religion up there.
Yeah.
Rugby league's a big thing, and then you start getting involved in what's sort of tied into that. Like obviously there's the NRL pathway, and then you learn about state of origin, and you're like a little kid playing, or like you're a kid playing like rugby league, and you're like, man, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Play for Queensland and do all that sort of stuff like that, play for Australia. So the pathway was kind of the same for me. I was like doing all these other sports, but I was, and playing rugby union too. I was playing rugby union for a different school, even though it was a weird setup because I was in the league academy at my school, and then I was playing rugby union for another school.
There you go.
And then I was kind of like, okay, I'm doing sport, and that's always was carried through. And being like, as a student, it was kind of like, I was always like the type of kid that would just like do my work, finish my work very quickly, and then just get into mischief. I was never good at like.
But you would do your work.
Yeah, 100%.
See, that's
the thing. I'd get good grades. Like the only subject I really sort of disliked thoroughly was maths, but all my other classes and that, I'd still get really good grades. I'd smash out the work I needed to do, and I'd do well, and I enjoyed it. Like my favorite subjects at school were like geography, history, biology, and then so there was a weird thing that I'd be like, I wouldn't be a good student, but I'd do well. But I think as I got older and started progressing into the sort of the grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, some of my teachers were very good at like seeing how I operate as a student, understanding that, okay, if you just give me an excess of work to do and more to do, that'll occupy me enough, and I'll just do that, and I won't act out,
okay,
and I won't get myself into trouble. But then sport was the thing that always pulled at me, and was the thing that I wanted to like sort of be focused on.
Yeah. So just to jump in there, how would you compare your school experience in Australia to that of South Africa? Vastly different.
Yeah.
So
different, but
would you say the bullying
similar.
had stopped?
Not eventually, but when I first moved here, my first sort of year or two of school in Australia was kind of the same. Like it was just like, now I'm being picked on because
why?
I'm being picked on because I'm that South African. I'm like the South African kid.
Was it your accent?
Yeah. So I got an accent.
I don't have any accent now.
Yeah, now I don't. I'm like
full bogan.
Yeah. I'm trying to sound like I've been here for years. But yeah, now I'm getting picked on because I'm like the kid from overseas that's just moved here and got a funny accent and I was like, this is weird. And then, but eventually that kind of evened out because eventually, you're here for a couple of years. Obviously your accent goes, so you kind of people just kind of are like, oh, yeah. Okay. Like, and then you go to a new school, so you start high school, you go to a new school, new people. No one's really like got that. Yeah, everyone's just meeting you sort of for the first time, and they're kind of like, oh, okay, it's an Australian dude that I'm going to school with. Like, no one actually knows. But yeah, and then I didn't finish like year 12. I dropped out halfway through. I just was like, I think I just got to the point in year 12 where I was just kind of like, I'm not enjoying this. Like I think this could be like, I was like, I think this could be done better. And I was like, I don't feel like I'm using my time in the best way. So I left school, started working, and then I did like a bridging course through CQ University, which gave me eligibility and like a year 12 equivalent pretty well. Yeah. So that I could, study at uni and stuff like that.
Oh, cool. Which uni did you go to?
So I did a bit at CQU and then a bit with Griffith, the rest of it with Griffith University based in the Goldie. And so, then I was working like all the way, since I left school, I was just working and, I did like a bunch of different jobs, and it was a cool thing to sort of see these, like go out there and be in the world in a way and trying to like, earn your own money, do these, have these different sort of experiences and realize like, the way that you're built up in school and what you think the world's going to be like and what you think everyday life as a worker in any industry is completely different. Like you have no idea what you're getting ready for. But I worked all the way through as a kid. Like I got my first job when I was like 13, 14.
Yeah.
So, I'd like had jobs. I worked at Domino's. That was my first ever job.
Yeah.
So that was, just working, not delivering pizzas, but obviously, working, making pizzas, doing all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then just had jobs all the way through. Like
same.
Did pretty much everything, worked, did some waitering, eventually did bartending, I've had some pretty cool jobs. I briefly, I worked as a coal sampler at a coal port.
Can I ask though, why did you feel so inclined to work so early in your life?
I think it comes, from my seeing my parents and my dad and my brother and that.
Was it because they were encouraging you to get jobs young, or they just wanted to instill work ethic?
I think my parents were like, it'd be cool for you to earn your own money. Like earn money, feel what that feels like. And then, I think, they just wanted me to know, experience what it's like so that eventually when I am actually now in a position where, okay, I have to work and I have to earn my own living and I have to I'm not going to be overwhelmed by this whole experience. I'm going to be like, oh, okay, I've been doing this for, once I leave school, I'm like, I can do uni. It's not like I'm going to go to school, do uni, and then now experience having a job for the first time and be like, oh, no, I can't do this. I've worked the whole way through, so I'm going to have I'm going to have an understanding and a foundation for it. But so that's pretty much what I did. And then I, from 2011 to 2013, probably November to 2013, I was just, working and just doing things and just enjoying myself as a young guy, going out, experiencing all that sort of stuff for the first time. You turn 18 and then you just through those years just going through, just running amok, having fun, working, traveling around, just doing those sort of things and being exposed to sort of, I guess, that side of Australian culture, like the drinking culture, the binge drinking culture, all that sort of stuff. I feel like there's nothing else, there's not anywhere else in the world, I think, that kind of, there's some places, I guess, that it's sort of similar, but it's not.
Where it's glorified?
Yeah, it's not really, yeah. So,
So, I mean, what's your opinion on that? Do you think it's good that it's glorified? Do you think it's necessary? I
definitely don't think it's necessary. Do I think that?
Because it is glorified.
It is glorified, 100%. And it's a weird thing when I look back at it now. I'm like, how did I ever think that was something
it's fucking
fun
weird.
to do?
Alcohol's never done anything good for any fucking society or people.
Don't get me wrong. On occasion, if after a fight or something, if I go out and celebrate,
I get it.
That also, there's some sort of occasion like that, where you're doing it. That's wicked. But now when I sit there and I look back and I go, how did I just every Thursday to Saturday every week? How did I just go out and drink?
I was the same. I was in that cycle for so long.
I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I know.
And then
do you feel like you lost some good years there in terms of health and fitness?
I think it's going to be later in life you're going to get the answer to that question. But I think for sure there's no way you didn't. And especially doing the sport that I do now, I think about that. I'm like, well, how much did I? If there's a count of how many punches or how much damage you can take in the sport of MMA, and you say you start out with a set amount, say it's 100,000.
Right.
How much did I lose from those 3 years of just drinking every weekend, every week.
Gotcha.
How much of my number did I lose, and how much do I have left?
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. You're thinking like that.
So, and
how do you feel then? How much do you feel like you've lost when you're, taking hits now? How much do you reckon? How much do you reckon you got left in the tank?
Honestly, if I'm being honest with myself, and I look at those couple of years from like 2011 to like 2013, once I sort of found myself starting MMA, I think, if say the starting number was 100,000, I think it's probably realistic to assume that 3 years of doing that to yourself you've probably lost a good 20, 30,000.
You think you've spent that much?
I think you've used up a fair bit.
Yeah. This is a really cliche question, but how concerned are you about things like CTE?
Obviously, it's a factor that plays in, and even it's more. I guess a lot of fighters probably don't speak on it enough, but I think everyone really has that moment, whether it's out the back before a fight, or the week of the fight, or at some point, or even right when they're standing in the cage about to fight. I think everyone has that that thought where they go, this could be the last time I do this.
Yeah. Okay.
This could be the last thing I do.
Yeah.
So, and it's not something that you can constantly think about, but I think at some point when you're getting ready for a fight or you're about to have a fight, you do have that thought where you go, oh no, like I could get hit and that could be it. Like this could be it.
Yeah.
And you have to, because that is a part of it. That's a very realistic part of it. Obviously MMA, as opposed to some of the other combat sports like boxing and that,
less hits.
Yeah, less hits, a lot safer. And I look at my fighting style and the fights I've had. I've been fortunate so far. Like I've not really sustained too much damage in my career and in my 16 pro fights that I've had, and even in my amateur fights, because especially in my amateur fights, like in my first few fights, because I was predominantly, like I'd say, a singular discipline type of athlete. I would just rely on my wrestling. Yeah. So when you're doing that and you're having a wrestling heavy game and you're taking people down and you're clinching with people and you're controlling people and you're not really getting hit. So I think collectively I've probably sustained heaps less damage than a lot of other people. Yeah.
Hey mate, are your opponents, especially now that you're featherweight champion of Australia in Eternal MMA, are you now finding that your opponents are really working on their takedown defense with you, and that's something you've got to come up against?
Yeah, 100%. I think people look at the way that I approach the sport, and obviously now I think I've shown since being a freestyle that I've evolved my game as a whole and I've made improvements. And I feel like now, since being a freestyle, I'm a complete mixed martial artist now. I don't think of myself as just a wrestler who can, take people down and control them and do what I need to do to eventually find a victory. And I think in some of my fights last year, that I think that was a wake-up call for some of the people that I fought, where they were so worried about the wrestling and the takedown. I ended up putting hands on them and hurting them, and they were like, "Oh no,
he's striking me." Shit,
yeah, this isn't part of the plan. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing. And I think I'm always looking to improve and develop my game. And Joe's been real big on making sure that across the board I'm doing that.
He's rounding you out.
He's really taken the base talent and foundation that I had and my skills and attributes and gone, okay, we're still going to utilize that, but we need to add these other things in and round it out. And I think that's the proof's in the pudding. Like if I look back at my year, last year, if I look back at the year I had, that kind of shows in the work that I did in the cage. And I think that's sort of, in a sense, a credit to the work that I'm doing with Joe and with Alex and what they're putting into me and investing into me and, my training partners and the collective sort of approach as a whole of the challenges I'm presented by my training partners, like Colby, like Jared, like Amina, like Volk, like when I'm dealing with these people, and I have to I have to approach my rounds with them a certain way, and I'm being exposed to these challenges, and I got people like Jamie Malarkey, Craig Jones, Josh Coolabau, Trent Girdham, like some of these top other athletes.
It's amazing,
coming in constantly, and I have to approach the game that way, and I have to go, well, what am I doing? Why is this not working? What do I need to change to get the desired route?
How's that for a fight camp though? Jeez,
it's so beneficial, but it's also very, very, very difficult.
Why? Because you have to work. You're working hard.
You're working hard. I never have easy rounds or moments when I'm sort of going through my preps for fights where I'm thinking like, oh, well, I'm just going to cruise through this.
Yeah, no.
That's not a thing.
No easy days.
It doesn't exist.
Can I just jump in? I want to pick you apart a little bit in a nice way. Like, you sort of made reference to being bullied in your younger years in South Africa, and then that, translated to being bullied as a migrant in Australia, and I've experienced it myself. My father's Maltese, but I was born and raised here. My mother's, her family been here for generation after generation as well, but because of my complexion and my surname, I was immediately categorised as an ethnic in this country, which I still just find so bizarre. And I think it's actually driven me. It's given me a lot of drive in a negative way to achieve things and do things in this sense of like I've got to prove myself. How much has that actually been a motivator for you to engage in a sport like MMA? Has it been a motivator, or is it purely because, this is a long fucking question, is it because you just love the sport?
I think my childhood and those sort of experiences definitely are a factor that led me to find MMA. I think I was always going to end up in combat sport of some capacity, like I'd obviously grown up, like my, uncles and my dad and everyone, like, they all did sort of some sort of combat sport, boxing, wrestling, stuff like that. So I feel like eventually I was going to find my way in combat sport. It was going to be the thing that I was going to sort of gravitate towards. But I think, being bullied, being like sort of picked on, getting into fights a lot as a kid, getting into fights like, and trying to, being in those situations where you kind of feel like you have to stand up for yourself. It was kind of like you're going to focus and gravitate towards something like that. So once I started MMA, so 2013, like I guess 2012, 2013, I really started watching the sport and started getting really interested. Like I watched it, I was sort of interested and watched it on and off like before that, but really I'm talking like I got obsessed with it. And then I was like, went on Google, and was like, MMA gym near me would like end up, and I was, like I said, I was living in Mackay at the time in North Queensland, and there was a, MMA gym, Mackay MMA was there, and I was like, okay, went there at the time. Like now they're in a established sort of awesome facility, great facility. It's, owned and operated by David and Tony Garnham, and they've like, they've got an established great setup now. But like initially when I first started, they were just doing it out of the YMCA, like the, like
Police Boys?
Yeah.
Police Boys Club? Yeah, PCYC?
PCYC type, sort of setup. We'd like roll these mats out, tape them together, and then we'd just get in there and do it. And I started, it was like towards the end of 2013, I started, and I was like initially just doing jiu-jitsu. I was like, oh, well, this is cool. And I was like, and then seeing the similarities, or like not similarities, but seeing how it, like the wrestling stuff can translate to this. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then so I started doing jiu-jitsu, and I started doing like a bit of like the MMA sort of stuff. And then I think I was doing that for like 6 months. And then my coach Dave at the time was like, called me up, and it was like a Saturday, and he was like, hey, do you want to fight next weekend in Brisbane? And I was like,
MMA or jiu-jitsu?
MMA.
Right.
And I was like, okay. So I had like my first, so then it was like on a week's notice. I was like, took my first amateur fight. He just got back from Fiji at the time, so he was sick. He got like some sort of stomach bug or something, I don't know, something crazy. He was like in hospital. It was like pretty hectic. He couldn't travel down with me, but put me in touch with some close friends of his, a guy named Ben Livingston, who's around the sport. He's been around the sport for a long time. He's cornered like some athletes from like the regional scene to the UFC and stuff like that. Super nice guy, and he actually, came to meet me at the show. Was there with me for the weigh-ins. Was there with me for the show. Wrapped my hands, cornered me on behalf of my coach Dave at the time, because otherwise I'd be there by myself.
Are you scared, dude?
I guess that's the only time where I've been scared and nervous and had like for a fight, and I was like, oh no, because it's like, it was at a week's notice. I didn't know what to expect. I remember just getting in there and going like, the first 2 rounds were just a blur. Yeah. I know I got the shit beat out of me for 2 rounds, but it was a blur. But I like, even so, I was having fun.
Yeah,
I was enjoying myself. It was just, I was just thinking, even through it, I was like thinking like, this is really, really cool, but also really, really shit, because I'm just getting bashed by this bloke. And then in the third round, I ended up, finding my feet a little bit, took him down. We scrambled, ended up in the middle of the cage. He got on top, reached back. I just was like on autopilot. Like we talk about like muscle memory and just doing something. The only submission in my short time in training jiu-jitsu that I'd started like clicking with was a triangle.
Right.
And I threw up a triangle choke. I latched it on.
Thank you. These coffee delivery. Thank you.
See? Service with a smile too. I threw up this triangle choke, and next thing I know, I've got this triangle choke locked on, and I've pulled his arm across, and I've like these big bulky shin pads on too. It was like really weird. And
you had to amateur. You had to wear
shin pads, bigger, bulky gloves. You can't strike to the head on the ground, so it was a weird sort of thing to try and sort of learn and find your way through, especially on a week's notice.
Yeah.
I threw up this choke. He sat back, so he was like in my guard, but he sat back, and I like saw the look on his face, like, oh no, like,
yeah,
he's not in like this. He's in trouble.
Yeah.
I ended up posting on the mat and coming up over it on top of him, and I ended up in like a mounted triangle.
Wow.
And I just remember squeezing with my legs, like with everything I had.
So you're on top of him.
I'm on top of him in a mounted triangle.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just remember him, like kind of just scrunching his face up, seeing he was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He tapped.
And
I let go, and as I let go, he passed out.
No.
And then I got up. Obviously, it was just in this elated feeling of just like, holy, this experience I just went through. And I was like, fuck yeah, I just won. Like,
how'd you feel?
It was the best. Like that adrenaline hit from knowing that you just went through something like that and then winning.
Were you worried about him though?
Yeah, straight away I was like, what are we going to do? He come to, is all good. And then obviously, Ben afterwards explained to me like, oh, like if you get choked out, it's just, you go out for a little bit, you come back, you're fine. Like,
yeah. Had you ever passed out from being choked out prior to that in training? So had you ever experienced that?
I've never experienced that.
And you'll never do.
I probably will.
And you're never going to.
Well, hopefully not in competition. If it happens in training, like I won't lie, there's a few times, especially with Colby, like where I've come close and I'm like, oh, this might be it.
Guy's a machine.
I think just out of pure ego, and you're like, I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of getting choking me unconscious. I'm like, I'm not giving that to him.
I've watched you roll. I was in awe of you one day. I was having a rest between rounds, and I was watching you do a few rounds. And you're just so advanced and technical. I kind of feel like you're too far down the journey now for someone to actually get you, unless you're coming up against you're training with like Craig Jones. Come on, man. Yeah, you've seen all the different looks now.
Yeah, he. When you get to that point, you're like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But listen, listen. I just want to go back. So, you originally getting into MA wasn't a desire to prove yourself or build confidence? Do you feel like you already had that?
I think doing all the other sport I did,
you'd already had that confidence. Yeah, I had. So you had self-confidence.
Yeah, I think, and I'd already, because my parents kind of always said to me and my dad, and that were like, you don't need to go and look for any sort of trouble or violence or problems, but you got to stand up for yourself.
Yeah,
that's something that's always been ingrained in my brother and I. And I kind of. I knew I just need to stand up for myself.
Yeah.
Every person has the right to stand up for themselves, no matter what the situation is, you have to.
Hell yeah.
So, I think that was, and then obviously the confidence from doing sport, experiencing adversity, experiencing difficulty, like especially team sports, losing and then feeling like you didn't do enough, you didn't put a good enough effort in, and maybe that was what's led to you guys losing, and now all these other people have to sit here and suffer through a loss because you feel like you didn't do something right, or you didn't do enough, or you fumbled something, or you messed something up completely, and you're like, I think that all shapes you and gives you that enough difficulty and enough sort of challenge that you kind of go, regular life and these other things, it's not that big of a deal.
How were you dealing with the bullies at your school in South Africa when you were young? Were you getting in fights at school?
Constantly. So I'd
standing up for yourself.
Initially, I was kind of like, I think there was there was a few days where I was just something would happen and I would just kind of try and walk away from it and leave it alone and not react. And then I think it was just kind of like eventually it was just kind of like, all right, well, this is just going to continue unless I kind of do something about it. So one of the days I just remember the school I went, it was a massive, the school actual grounds of the school, which is huge. And the oval was like super big. And I remember there was like one day there was like the oval, and to the sort of we walk towards from out of the classrooms and stuff like that. To the left is like the teachers' car park and stuff like that. and there's like this just massive oval. And it was a lunch at one time, and I was walking to the oval to go like see some of my friends, and yeah, this older kid just come up to me, and he just shoved me in the back from behind and like fell on the ground, and then he was like throwing like obviously you go to school, you go to the tuck shop, you get like pies and fruit. Here it's obviously you get pies and stuff, you get different food and stuff, and he like threw his food at me, and I just remember thinking like, man, like this can't keep going. And I just remember I grabbed this kid, and obviously I'd been doing like a bit of stuff like already, and I was like, and I just remember I grabbed this kid and I just slammed him head first into a car, like into the car window, one of the teacher's cars, and he just hit the car, fell on the ground, and was just like holding his nose and just crying and upset. And I just remember just grabbing my bag and walking away and going like, okay, well, let's, that's it. Like
it's intense.
If I can't.
Did the word spread around the school pretty quick that Justin ain't taking no shit? Yeah,
I think eventually, like after a few sort of instances like that, where like it just got to a point where people were just like, okay, like, I mean, yeah, it's like we can pick on the kid, but he's not going to just be a kid that we pick on and he's just going to accept it. And that like, okay, we can pick on him, but he's probably going to retaliate.
Yeah.
And then, what happened was I was like, I think I was in grade 4 or grade 5 or something like that. And then one of my cousins actually came to my school because they moved, to Johannesburg. So then one of my cousins was at my school, and older than me, was at my school. And then very quickly, a few times people were trying to like pick on me and do stuff, like some of the older kids. And my cousin, she like slapped some people around and was like, she's a bigger kid, like she's older, so she was like, just slapped a couple kids around and kind of like. That sort of happened, and I think that kind of evened it out a bit, and eventually it kind of got to a point where it was like it wasn't that bad, and it was like with students I kind of, and then I think when I started making more friends with people and started actually trying to get to know people and putting these experiences aside, then it evened out.
Gotcha.
But that was never a factor as to why I wanted to do MMA. I don't think that ever was like. I think the fighting side of it, like the actually standing up for myself, getting into fights and that's a factor that gravitated me towards like combat sports, but it wasn't actually like, I need to learn how to do this to like.
It was more a love of the game.
Yeah. And then, like I said, I started watching the sport and getting obsessed with it, and I was like, I want to try this.
Yeah. Got
hooked. After I had that first fight, I was like, yep, I knew when I won, and especially when winning, getting that feeling and knowing like, okay, I'm like, this is it. This is what I want to do. Yeah. So then I started, fighting. So I was like nine amateur fights I had. So, and I didn't.
Were these all around Queensland?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, which sort of in Brisbane.
Yeah,
mostly Mackay, Rockhampton. Places like that. I fought in a rodeo arena one time in Rockhampton, which was pretty cool. They set up the cage like right in the rodeo arena, and you came walking out where they sort of bring the bulls out and stuff like that.
Epic.
It was so cool. So like, I fought.
That's wild.
I fought on a few sort of shows, as an amateur, and I think. In this game and in this sport, there's that a lot of people have this boxing approach where it's about they want to just be undefeated, they don't want to lose, and they want to sort of build up this thing. And especially as amateurs, and I knew very quickly, and I had this conversation with a few people, my amateur tenure is just about getting every experience possible that I can in the sport. Winning and losing doesn't matter. Losing sucks, you're going to lose, it's going to sting you, you're going to have that, you're going to feel that, and you're going to go, this sucks, man, I don't want to feel like this again. That is important, but I've lost in other sports, so it's not like losing was a new thing to me. But like, I just wanted to experience everything. I wanted to have those quick fights, those quick wins. I wanted to have those losses. I wanted to have, obviously I didn't want to lose, but I knew that having those, like having a few losses, experiencing a full distance of a fight, getting, punched in the face and not being able to stop someone from doing whatever they want to do to you, all of that's going to factor in. Because if I really want to do this, I'm going to have those experiences to carry me through my sort of pro tenure.
So you're 11-5, yeah?
Yeah.
So what element of your game were you losing in? Was it obviously not wrestling?
No, it was.
So the times you lost, it was through striking?
Yeah. So especially.
Is there sorry to jump in. Is there a theme there? Is there a common?
Yeah, okay. I didn't actually even I didn't really start focusing on striking until sort of going into like my 4th pro fight.
Yeah.
Really like trying to learn and do it. I was just kind of winging it, relying on my wrestling, just relying on my wrestling and my grappling. I was kind of like, okay, well, this is what got me to the dance. This is what's working.
Gotcha.
at the time, so I had my pro debut. I fought a guy named Aaron Fisher in 2017. That's when I went pro. I fought a guy named Aaron Fisher, who's based out of Puma at the time, Chelsea and Jared's former gym
Queensland?
under Vince Perry. Yeah. And he was undefeated as an amateur, undefeated as a pro. He'd never lost in jiu-jitsu competition. Just a monster. Made my pro debut against him. I choked him out in the first round, and I don't think he's fought. I don't think he fought again after that. He was just this. I was like, this guy is like legit. Like, I've got to be. This is going to be crazy. Like, I don't have an easy fight for my first pro fight. And then what happened was I made my pro debut, but 2 weeks before my pro debut, I broke my left foot. But not a complete break. It was like it was a break, but not like, it wasn't fully broken, and it wasn't like like that sort of level of injury, so I could still fight.
Yeah.
Made my pro debut, won. The foot was like healed enough that 3 weeks later, what happened was a guy's opponent pulled out Diego Pereira, who I fought now in a rematch in my last fight. His opponent pulled out, and they're like, do you want a quick turnaround? Do you want to fight again? I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so what's the shortest you'll take a fight on? Shortest notice?
The shortest notice that I have taken a fight on was at the weigh-ins.
A pro fight?
Yep.
At the weigh-in? What? The day of the weigh-ins?
The day of the weigh-ins. I've done that twice.
So, and this is a question I actually had written down, is that, when you're not in a specific fight camp, how disciplined are you staying with your training regime?
I think, that's always something. I was always training. You're always training. Always training, always staying in shape.
So you're partly on, in the back of your head, you're partly on call. You're on call.
But even in saying that, when I compare to me not being in camp and just training at Freestyle compared to every other place I've been at, it's vastly different. Like, I think just like training and just being sort of in the gym at Freestyle and the sessions we're getting in and the caliber of people that you're working with, you're probably in better fight shape than most people after a fight camp. And then, we look at when we're in camp and the stuff I'm doing, and then when you get into fight shape, you're like, okay, this is a whole nother level. So for me, when I went pro, I then fought 3 weeks later against Diego. I lost. And then I was sort of in limbo at the time, then I long story short, I left Mackay, I moved to Brisbane. I had another fight sort of in between that, but I literally wasn't even training. I got offered a fight on a week's notice, fighting on a Russian promotion that was doing a show on the Gold Coast. And I was just I wasn't even training really. I just got offered a fight, and I was like, there was just I can make the weight and fight, whatever, I'll just show up and fight. And this Russian promotion, they had money to burn, they had money to spare. So, they were like, how much do you want? I gave them a figure, they were like, yep. And I was like, first off, I was like, okay, sweet. But I was like, man, I should ask for more. What is going on right now? But so I ended up fighting.
I've been in a similar situation. I'm like, God damn it, why didn't I say it?
Why didn't I start higher?
And that's the biggest lesson. You always start high because then you can work backwards. When you start low, you can...
That's it. So I ended up having this fight. Wasn't even training, lost. So then I sort of was in this position. I had 3 pro fights. I was 1 and 2. And then I was like, okay, I really need to decide what I want to do. So I moved to Brisbane. I joined Southside MMA, which was, the team and the gym that Diego was based at. And I made a connection with the head coach, Pasha Stolya. He's because he came up to Mackay and did a jiu-jitsu seminar. Yeah. He's a very talented jiu-jitsu black belt. He's the first Ukrainian jiu-jitsu black belt.
Okay.
He's been around the game and around combat sports. He's Ukrainian, grew up in, back in the day, grew up in the Ukraine when they were still pulling kids aside who had any sort of athletic talent and promise and putting them into sport. So this guy's been around for a while, and he, especially with jiu-jitsu, MMA, that sort of stuff. Yeah. And then I joined Southside. I moved to Brisbane, based myself there, and then I spent a good few years sort of there, and I sort of had a number of fights, pro fights, and then I started really finding my feet and taking the sport. I was like, this is what I want to do.
But can we, sorry, I'm just to get back on track a little bit. So with that fight you took with the Russian promotion at a week's notice, and you said you hadn't trained much.
Barely, yeah.
Did you win?
No.
Okay.
So I was on a 2-fight losing streak.
Okay.
Went to Southside, was training there for a bit, was struggling to sort of get a fight lined up. Then eventually I got another fight lined up. Went to Adelaide, fought on a promotion, Diamondback MMA, fought a guy named Alan Hartley, fought him, won. And then I was like really starting to find my feet a bit, and I felt like I was based in a good place. I had good training partners, I had good coaching, and I was like, okay, now I was sort of really taking the sport, starting to take it more seriously. And then, obviously during my time at Southside, I had a few fights, and like the results of fights at my weight class, I did very well, but there's a few times, like if I look at my record's 11-5, but at featherweight I've got 3 losses, and in my last fight I've avenged one of them against Diego. Like I got my get back there, but so my record like at my weight class is I think something like 9-3 or something like that.
Gotcha.
My 2 other losses is
you weren't in your regular weight class.
Nah, I fought up in weight on short notice.
Gotcha.
And 2 of those were at the weigh-ins. I took the fight.
Unbelievable, dude.
And one of them was a split decision at welterweight.
Interesting.
So what happened was with those, and that was, I mean, looking back in hindsight, I can sit here and go, oh, I shouldn't have taken those fights because I wouldn't have those losses on my record. But at the same time, I think they've factored into where I'm at now, and I look at where I'm at now. And also there was a few sort of, I guess, factors that played in. Like I was struggling to get fights at my weight, and I was like, well, I want to fight. So initially, the first time I did it was against a guy named Aidan Muroki on Eternal. It was the night before weigh-ins. It was the Thursday night, and we found out that his opponent pulled out. Tristan Murphy pulled out, who's based out of Combat Training Centre in the Gold Coast. He had injured his back and had to pull out. I, at the time was at the gym, sort of at Southside, and I said to Pasha, I was like, call Cam, I'll fight. I've been training, I'm in shape, I'll fight. I don't have to cut weight, I'll fight. I'm walking around at 76, like I'm fine, like let's go. And obviously at the time I was training with Casey O'Neill, Cam's daughter, who's now in the UFC, and she called him as well, straight away, and was like, Dad, Justin will fight him, like let's put this together. And, they were obviously, Cam and Ben, the promoters for Eternal, were pretty reluctant because it was up like 2 weight classes from my natural weight. The guy I was fighting against was actually cutting down from like a heaps big weight. It was his first fight back after a big layoff. So, he was going to be walking into the cage after weighing in at like 70, 76, 77 and walking into the cage like in the 80s. And I was just walking in with what I was like, that's it. So I think they were pretty reluctant, but then, we all kind of like convinced them and they were like, all right, let's do it. I had some teammates fighting on the card, rocked up to the weigh-ins on the Friday, jumped on the scale, weighed in at like 76.7, did my face off with my opponent that way. But also I was thinking like, well, this poor guy's going to miss out. He's been killing himself to try and get ready for this. Now he's going to miss out. I've been in that situation. If I can remedy that. Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about my record. I wasn't thinking about trying to build up something. I was just like...
Doing him a favour.
Oh, yeah, I just want to fight. And I don't want this guy to miss out. So I was like, all right, let's do it. End up fighting him. We went all 3 rounds, lost a split decision. Probably, even looking back now, like all my fights I've had, like, especially now as a pro, I've had like, 16 fights. It's probably the most fun fight I've ever had because it was just like, there was no, I wasn't sitting there for weeks breaking this dude down. I didn't have to cut weight. I just got in there and it was like, we just
felt relaxed?
Being relaxed in the cage is something that I started getting down pat probably after like my 3rd or 4th amateur fight.
Wow,
like,
dude.
No nerves, none of that sort of stuff.
So I went the full, through what, 3 rounds?
We went the full 3 rounds. I won the first round. He punched me around in the second round. Like he laid some, he's got good technical boxing, got a lot of, and he's got power in his hands. So in the second round, he came out to knock me out because got to think from his point of view, he did a full camp. He was preparing for someone a lot bigger than me, a lot of it, it's a different factor now. He's fighting a guy that's coming up 2 weight classes down. Yeah. So I think in his mind, he was like, oh, like I'm going to run through this guy. And in the first round, I gave him some serious adversity to deal with. I nearly subbed him at the end of the first. I was very close. I was on his back, standing rear naked choke, and ran out of time. But I outclassed him in the first round. And I think, and he's at the time too, he's a high level jiu-jitsu guy as well. He had some really good grappling as well. So I think that all factored in. And then in the second round, so I remember Pasha just saying to me, like, he's going to try and knock you out this round. Like he's going to try and kill you.
And he did.
And he did. and like I took his best shots. And I feel like what factored in, had I cut weight, I don't think I would have been able to cop what I took in that second round. I feel like that would have factored in.
Yeah.
So because I didn't have to cut weight, I think I was able to deal with that, the damage that I took in that second round a lot better. Come out for the third round, and the third round was real close. We both had some success. And then, ended up going split decision against me. But it was like probably one of the fights where I wasn't, even though I lost, I didn't sit there and I wasn't even upset. I lost the decision, and I just remember thinking like, well, I feel like I left everything in there. I went for it.
Did it on
one judge,
notice, no training.
Yeah, one judge didn't see it my way. I can't argue with that, you know.
So you had your first pro fight in 2017 and been fighting consistently ever since. How have you been sustaining yourself financially in that time?
Just working sort of, you know, various sort of different sort of jobs. Like when I was in Brisbane,
Not just hustling.
Yeah, just doing everything I can, but just making MMA the main focus. And that's the thing, like with this sport, is there's so much sacrifice. So when I was in Brisbane, eventually I got set up and I was just working. I was working on high rises, doing a lot of height safety stuff like abseiling and stuff like that off buildings. So that was kind of cool.
Like
so
window cleaning?
Window cleaning, height safety stuff.
Those guys are so gnarly.
So I was doing that, and so I was, you know, which was kind of cool and kind of just fit in real well because the hours and everything were great. It didn't affect my training.
Yeah.
You know, the money is really good because you're hanging off the side of a building, and you got that adrenaline factor as well.
Is it peaceful up there?
It's so chill.
It looks peaceful.
It's so cool. So that was a cool thing to do while I was, you know, fighting and when I was based in Brisbane. But initially, before I got set up to do that, I was just doing anything I can to try and earn money. And initially, when I first moved down to Brisbane, when I first went down there, I was in the Gold Coast, and you know, trying to be based in the Gold Coast and focus on fighting and then trying to hustle and work. And then I was living in a share house with two friends at the time who were both of them had their own business. One was an electrician, one's a plumber. And Thursday to Sunday, these dudes are partying.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to live in a house as a professional athlete with that sort of all going on. And, you know, it's just, and obviously my partner at the time, Sarah, she was trying to focus on her uni stuff, but made the decision to move down with me to the coast. And like we're trying to as a couple of young adults, trying to find our feet, trying to get set up and established, and then you're trying to combat all these things. But yeah, I try and tell people like I've had to do anything, like so many various different types of jobs and gigs to just earn money to continue to pursue this and just do it with, and even in saying that, like the earning money, trying to do jobs, trying to hustle, get money as much as you can. I couldn't be doing what I'm doing and couldn't be in the position I'm in without the support that I've gotten from everyone, like my family, Sarah at the time. Like, you know, she's obviously, we've since we moved down to Brisbane, we've obviously since split, and but we have a child together. You know,
congratulations.
We co-parent. Obviously, we have a great relationship when it comes to that side of things. So because obviously we have a daughter, so like we kind of I think we're both mature enough that we went as a couple and as people. We're not clicking, so we're going to separate that. But as a family unit and as two parents that are responsible for shaping a young human being's mind and experience and like life, like we just need to do that. That's the focus.
You're putting the children first.
Yeah. So, but we have a great relationship.
Or the child.
Yeah. I've my daughter Justice, she's 2, and you know, we just went, okay, well, we have a great sort of co-parenting relationship, I'd say, and a great sort of thing, you know, a great setup so there's no.
So she stayed in the local area. She's from Queensland.
Yeah. So she moved down, and you know, she's pretty much right now just about to finish her uni degrees. She's been studying for like 7 years.
Amazing.
She's doing like a dual degree and
being a mother
and being a mother.
That's epic.
And we were talking about this the other day actually, and like, you know, she sacrificed a lot in her life for me to be able to pursue this, and in some ways still does, because you know this sport it's as much as it is in some ways like a sort of team sport in some ways and that, but really this is a selfish sport, and the sacrifices that you have to make, like, and that other people have to make for you to pursue this is just insane. And I was actually, like, we were talking about it the other day, like she's pretty much like submitted her last ever assignment now and everything like that, and I just like it's just a crazy thing to think about, like from her just packing up and moving down with me, moving away from her family.
Yeah.
Everything that she's had to sacrifice and give up over the years for me to pursue this, and then still trying to focus on her uni and like keep that going. And then, you know, becoming a mother, you know, having to step away from her own training and stuff like that.
Stayed in the local area.
Yeah, and like obviously, and then making the decision to move from the Gold Coast down here with me. You know, we packed up our car, drove 2,000 kilometres from North Queensland to Wollongong with a 4-month-old baby.
Wow.
Like, I'll never, ever do that again in my life. Like, that's a trip that no one should have to do.
That's intense.
It was intense. It was difficult. And then obviously, you know, moving down here, being away from her family, being sort of, you know, the only family or person that she has was like myself and our daughter.
Yeah.
And then obviously initially, you know, with us sort of me pursuing the sport and, you know, having to make even more sacrifices, then, you know, doing that off the back of her mum passing away from cancer. Like all these factors, and she's smashed it, got all the way through.
Yeah.
And then last year, you know, she put herself out of her comfort zone, got in the cage, had an MMA fight.
Oh, what a champion.
Like, did all these things on top of having to do her uni, on top of being a mother. It's like, I look at that and I go, man, my pursuit of my sport and what I have to do and the struggles that I have or things that I experience, it's not even going to come close, and not many people would even be able to continue doing it like that.
Yes,
and I
dude.
draw off that, and I know that, you know, it makes me feel very happy and gives me a lot of confidence and comfort knowing that my daughter has someone like that to look up to.
Oh, bro.
So
this is good, man.
So I think I think it's hard for people, and as a man, sometimes it's hard to put yourself in a vulnerable position and look at your attributes as a human being, look at you, like be vulnerable within yourself, do some reflection and go, man, I need to be better. I need to do better. And
it's hard.
I really think that our relationship as being two people that were together, trying to sort of build a life together, going through everything that we've gone through collectively, and then being in the situation we are now where as an individual, I'm happy, as an individual, she's happy, as a collective family unit that's like co-parenting and working together to raise a child, it's everything's just in a good spot. And I think that all has led me to go, you know, take a step back, and especially with, you know, with everything that Sarah sort of does and says and is, you know, doing for within herself, I look at that and I go, man, I need to work on myself. I've got a tiny human being that looks after me that I've got to try and shape and get ready for the world. How can I do that if I'm not going to be open and vulnerable with myself and do some reflections? Because it's easy to sit here and go, okay, I'm an MMA fighter, I do this sport, I just have to be tough all the time, or I don't have to let my emotions affect me. But that's not the case. Like, you've got to be vulnerable, and I feel like when you're in a sport like this where vulnerability means death, I think you have to confront that in other areas of your life.
Well, I think it requires emotional intelligence, and that's a common theme that's coming out for me. Like, you know, getting to understand MMA fighters is that a high level of emotional intelligence is required because you are dealing with some really heavy emotions all the time. You know, you're constantly dealing with fear. You know, you're constantly dealing with, you know, probably levels of anxiety, stress from training, things like that. So
you're sort of combating everyday life and things and emotions and feelings and stresses from other areas in your life, and then you're trying to, you know, not let that affect you in your pursuit of your professional aspect of like doing the sport. But like I said, it comes back to obviously the collective experience of pursuing it and experiencing everything all the way through, and knowing that you're going to get through. You're going to get through, like even in a small way, like being in the gym, doing a round, and then maybe it's not going your way, but then you start finding a way to turn the tide. Now you're having some success. You've changed the position. You were stuck in a position you were losing. Now you're finding success. You're winning, and then that translates to life. And then you kind of go, okay,
analysis.
Yeah, you kind of go, okay, well, this isn't working right now. This sucks, but it's going to get better. But it comes back to then the support system around you. And like I said, with my family, you know, my mum and dad have done so much for me.
Are they in the area? Or are they still in Queensland?
They're in North Queensland still.
Still in North.
Wow, so they've done so much for me throughout my pursuit of this sport, and especially since I went pro and actually started, like, you know, dedicating my life to it. My parents have done so much to sort of assist me and help me when they can, and, you know, I'm obviously thankful, because without that support system, like, who knows if I'd even still be pursuing the sport.
Yeah.
And then, like I sort of touched on before, the biggest factor, the biggest support, the biggest, I think, thing that's sort of assisted me in pursuing the sport and getting through these, times where I've had struggles and challenges and adversity has been, Sarah's been a big factor in that. She's had to put so much on hold in her own life and sacrifice so much for me to be able to pursue the sport, while still giving me support and like a comfort, and in a way of going like, you know what, I know this, like maybe this isn't working out right now. This is maybe you just like I just lost a fight, or maybe this isn't working, or something's not panned out. Yeah. And I'm down on myself and whatever, and then guiding me back up, and then giving me like a realistic sort of assessment and going, this is what's happening. It's not the be all end all. And here's why, because look at this. Do you remember when you went through this? Do you remember when you went through this? Look at do you remember when we had to battle through this challenge, or whatever, whatever it may be. So then I kind of go, okay, so I'm very aware enough to know that I'm in the position I'm in the sport that I pursue, based on the incredible coaching I have, the training partners I have, my own talents and abilities and commitment to the sport, and ability to go out there and perform. Because at the end of the day, like, you can have all the factors in your way, but I've still got to get in there and fight. You know what I mean? Like, I have the best coaches, I have the best training partners, but it doesn't really mean shit if I can't go in there and perform. And
you're in an amazing co-parent relationship with someone you respect and acknowledge the sacrifice they've made, which is great. And you don't hear. I mean, listening to your story, you don't hear this very often. You don't hear people speaking so highly of their former partner, which is I think a win in itself so far. And I'm sure the journey will have its ups and downs. I guess, like, what's the question I want to sort of get to, though, with all this support, and you're in, an elite training facility and camp with the most elite fighters in the world, what's the end goal for you? Where are you going with this? You're featherweight champion of Australia, okay, and you were set to defend your title in February against Rod Costa, is that
February
correct?
February 11th against Rod Costa, the current bantamweight champion from Eternal.
And we'll talk about what's going on there in a minute. I want to go back to that. I know I just want to touch on it. We don't have to go too deep.
We can dive in.
But what, in your mind, what's the end goal? I mean, I'm guessing, the obvious one would be UFC contract.
Yep. So for me, it's nothing short of a world championship. That's my standard and my goal.
In what promotion?
In the UFC.
In the UFC. Eh?
I kind of, when I really started pursuing this sport and getting stuck into it and going like, this is what...
Featherweight?
Yeah, this is what I want to do. Well, I say that, but who knows what's going to happen with, my body as I progress through. Like, I'm a big featherweight. Eventually, who knows, I might have to move up in weight. My body and the approach to that sort of aspect of the sport, the nutrition and, having to cut weight and stuff like that. I'm thankful that I have, like, the fight dietitian team, like Jack Doherty, and that, like, they're, just looking out for me and handling that side of things. And I have people like Chris Jaffrey at Baymed who, is doing my strength and conditioning and stuff like that. So if these collective brilliant minds in their own individual fields get to the point where they go, hey man, maybe it's time that we talk about, like, you have to maybe move up in weight, or maybe, for you to get the best and where the best out of yourself and where you're at now and what your body's sort of responding to. Because that's their job, to dictate all that and work all that out. I just show up, do what they tell me to do, and I fight.
When you're outside of fight camp, do you go the full Paddy Pimblett diet-wise and just eat whatever? Like that guy.
I indulge for sure, but I don't. I don't get to that point. Like, I never get that high. Like, the highest weight I've gotten to was probably last year when I was initially scheduled to fight for the title, and I injured my ribs, and I missed out. There was like a good period there where I kind of indulged a fair bit, and I got up to like 80 kilos.
See, I find it interesting when, like, again, I don't want to talk about Paddy Pimblett too much, but like, I just find it interesting how he's like, he's all about, like, you'll see him at the press conference there after a fight and he's eating a fucking hamburger or whatever. Like, I know it's all part of his, like, shtick. But then the way I see it, and I'm sure other people say this too, it's like then when he goes back into a fight camp, he's starting in a deficit, if that makes sense. Like, so it's like his first thing he's got to work on is just getting his fitness back and then refining skills when Isn't it just like you want to be just working on refining your skills and you don't want to have to... And is that what he's doing?
I think, well, in a way, yes, but I've also had it put to me that, because he works with some elite sort of doctors and nutritionists and stuff like that, so he's got like one of the best possible teams in that aspect that he works with. So I don't think that he actually ends up cutting a ridiculous amount of weight. So like when it comes down to it. But in saying that, yeah, like how long can you do that for before it does start affecting?
But it's still going to affect your health.
100%.
Like, okay, you might be the weight might not be an issue, but you're not functioning at your optimal state.
No, it's probably not good.
And you've got to get back to that.
And I definitely don't do that. Like I don't try and do that. I try and, for the most part, I still, even out of camp, I still follow. Like obviously when I'm in fight camp, I have a specific nutritional plan that I follow. But outside of that, I still sort of do in a sense. It's just, there's a bit more leeway and I can have those, few meals where I'm indulging a bit more but I'm talking to Jack weekly and we're talking about, okay, we're sort of how am I feeling, how am I sleeping, what's my weight at in and out of camp. So it's like even now when I was, after I fought and won the belt, and it was over Christmas and New Year's, and I knew I wasn't going to I was still training all the way through because I knew I was going to be scheduled for February. Even then he was like, still take those times to indulge and have these other things, but we're weekly, we're communicating, we're talking. So we're in a spot where he can break it down and go, hey man, if you want to go have pasta every night this week, go have pasta every night this week. Okay. You're fine. But and it's all guided like that. So I have the confidence in that I just listen. And,
you need a balance.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like since working with him and the team, like my weight cut process and dieting and nutrition and getting that side of things dialed in has just been perfect.
And how do you feel?
Yeah, you feel really, really good. And the amount that you're eating is a lot more. Like before, I was just winging it. Like I would just do stupid shit, to be honest. Like I'd start water loading leading into fight week, but I just wouldn't eat anything. This is really dumb, but I would be drinking 8 liters of water because I'm water loading, and the only thing I'd eat would be this shows the level of, or the lack of sort of knowledge in this area at the time, where I would then eat some salt and vinegar chips because it's real salty and make me want to drink more water. So I'd just do that so I could get my water down, but didn't realize that I'm not eating anything of nutritional value. I'm not eating anything to still fuel myself during fight week. I'm ingesting the main thing that you need to cut out, which is sodium. So yeah, I'll be honest. Before I started doing it with the boys and with Jack and the team at the Fight Dietitian, I was just winging it and just doing stupid shit. And I just remember just being people around me going what are you doing,
dude? That's funny. Speaking of water loading, man, I've got to piss.
Easy.
Let's have a quick break. Back. Yes, podcast issue. I'm the worst, man. I love coffee and I drink a lot of water in the mornings. I hydrate as soon as I wake up. I drink 2 liters of water. It's made such a difference to my life. Actually, there's a few things I do. As soon as I get out of bed, cold shower, followed by 2 liters of water, followed by black coffee.
Yep. That's
my ultimate day. Have you got a morning routine?
Yeah, so it's, for me, the main thing, is getting up. Coffee's an essential.
Good. It's so good.
Getting a decent amount of water or hydration in at the start, is always, you just feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I the cold shower thing was something that I started doing because Colby actually was always just talking about, how that sort of is a thing to do, give that a go. And then I just started doing that. As well, so in the morning, it gives you that initial hit, and I feel you get energy out of it. Where you're
shit, yeah,
I'm ready to go. Let's go start the day.
I've researched it, and again, I'm a Andrew Huberman. He's the neuroscientist. He has his own podcast, and he's I'm a fanatic of his, and he basically talks about how when you do it, then your body it regulates your hormones, which actually helps with your sleep the following night.
Yep.
And then it also gives you a slow dopamine release throughout the day.
Yeah.
So you'll be cold, and then afterwards just start to feel good, but it's a slow hit of dopamine. So it improves mood. It can really help with people who are suffering from depression, anxiety as well. So yeah. So we're talking about your diet. You've got a lot of good people around you with that. And
I've got professionals around me, so I don't stress about those sort of things. And if you look at me. if you look at last year, so I had 4 fights in 10 months.
Epic.
My first fight was in February last year, around about my birthday, because that's usually just when they usually schedule the first shows of the year. So that's something like since I started fighting, especially professionally, around my birthday, I'm always like well aware of the fact that my birthday's kind of ruled out. There's no dinner that I can go to or like something that I can do because I'm always in camp. But so last year that was the first fight that I worked with Jack and the fight dietitian team, and and then you look at me visually from fight to fight. I personally think that you can see a difference in my physique as well, and that's compounded by what I'm doing with Jaff at
But at a similar weight.
Yeah.
Same weight. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm, if you look at it, you can sort of see from when I started working with them to now, I feel like I'm, like aesthetically and visually I look better than I've ever looked, but I also feel better than I've ever felt. And I think that's factored into my stuff at Baymed. And I feel like I'm carrying a lot more muscle mass. I feel like I'm a lot more explosive.
That's got to be a conundrum for fighters. It's like with weight, you got to watch out for, you don't put on too much muscle as well. That's going to put you over.
That's something that, when I do we do body scans and stuff like that, and, we're sort of checking on everything. There was, like, going into my fight with Muhammad Alavi, like halfway through last year, I got like a body scan done at the start of camp, and my body fat percentage was obviously low, but it was like well under 10%. Like well under. And I was like thinking, how the fuck am I going to make like 66 kilos? How's this going to work?
How tall are you? 5'11" or something?
Yeah.
You're like just under 6 foot.
Yeah.
And you get down to what? 67, 66. That's
my
insane,
last fight,
dude.
so my championship fight, I weighed in, our championship weight, which is 65.8.
Wow.
So, and then I walked into the cage the next day. I don't try and rehydrate too much and get to like, too much of a crazy, amount of weight that you put back on. I used to, that's what was the thing. Like, okay, let's just pack on as much as we can, rehydrate and try and get to like the highest weight possible. But now I just rehydrate to the weight that I'm sitting at for most of camp, which is like 73 and a half kilos. And I feel the best there because I've been moving around that weight for the whole camp. So when I rehydrate and I get in there in the cage, I just feel great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I cut a bit of weight to get down to featherweight. Like I'll probably water cut like probably around 5-6 kilos.
Wow.
When I
how are you doing it? Sauna, hot bath, sweatsuit,
sauna. Yeah, sauna. I'm pretty like people have their preferences, but I don't mind. But the bath, like doing the bath and wrapping up and doing it that way is probably the fastest and best way to do it.
So for those that are unfamiliar, like you're going hot bath,
yep,
followed by wrapping yourself in a sweatsuit,
towels,
or just
blankets, sweatsuit. You're just wrapping yourself up, trying to,
and then going back and forth.
Yeah, and trying to elevate your body temperature and keep it at a high point so that you're sweating out the water weight that you're sort of carrying. You're doing the same thing in the sauna, and you can, there's all these sort of different ways to do it, depending on depending on how much weight you have to cut. Like if you say you don't cut too much weight, like say there's people that need to lose like a kilo to get on weight, they might just rug up, chuck a sweatsuit on and lightly jog on a treadmill or go for a run or hip pads or, there's all these different ways that you can do it. But, if generally for me, I will do some of the weight the night before the weigh-ins, and then I'll do the rest early in the morning.
Gotcha.
Before the weigh-ins, because usually, and with Eternal, you have the benefit that you have early weigh-ins. Some of the other promotions.
When you say early, like what? How many days out? Like 1-2 days out?
So the night, it's 24 hours before the fight, but I mean like the actual time on the day is like 10 a.m.
Oh, excuse me.
As opposed to with a lot of the other shows, it's in the afternoon, like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Oh God!
So
then you've got the whole day to eat, hydrate.
Yeah, I've got like 36 hours to rehydrate as opposed to 24.
Well, what's been the biggest weight difference from weigh-in to actual fight? How much can it change? Like 5 kilos?
So normally on average I weigh in at like 66 and I walk in at 73.
Wow.
So
in 24 hours, but not even a day.
When I fought, like for example, when I fought Alavi, based on some factors that were put forward to me, we made the collective decision, my nutritionist and that I was going to rehydrate a bit more based on some funny business that we heard about, but that's neither here nor there. So I weighed in at, for that fight, I weighed in at like 77.
Dude, you know I want to ask you the question about that.
Okay, I can speak on it.
You know I want to ask. Sorry.
It was put forward to me all the way through my camp by a number of individuals. I was contacted on every platform possible and every capacity that you could think of. And they were telling me that, asking me if Eternal's got like drug testing or anything like that. And I was like just whatever, it's neither here nor there, like I'm just going to fight. And it was put forward to me that my opponent was, taking vitamins, taking some sort of, thing that, is going to.
He might not know what's in the vitamins.
Exactly. So taking some sort of supplements or steroids or PEDs or something. I don't know if he does or doesn't. I don't really care. I don't know. So I'm not going to sit here and go, yeah, the guy's for sure taking stuff. But I just going off what I was, told and what I'd received off the people. I sort of had the discussion with my nutritionist and people, and I was like, and then it was just put forward to me like, okay, well, it's most like, let's just go off the fact that let's just approach it like, okay, even if that is a possibility and that is something that is happening, I don't know. Like I said, even if it is, I don't care. Like I'm sure in my 16 fights, I've probably have fought someone that is doing something that they shouldn't be doing.
But how strict is Eternal? Are they? I mean, there's no USADA, is there?
No. So we.
What do they do? Do they test?
No.
Interesting. So, fuck, that's scary to know that they don't do that.
And it's more so a fact of just like people don't understand. Like it's a cost issue. Like I spoke to someone last year about this. It's for one test. Like one individual test is like $1,200. Now think about it. If you have like 10, 11 fights on the card for each person that you got to test. Like
it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, man. And obviously Eternal's established as the biggest promotion in the country, but they're not the UFC, they're not PFL, they're not these big promotions that are generating millions and millions of dollars. You can spare that. Like, they do like 3-4 shows a year. Like think about that money that you got to spend. You wouldn't have a show. Like you're gonna run out of money. Like so. At a local level and a regional scene, like I think people have spoken about this all the time, but there's no like we don't get drug tests or anything like that. So I think, like I've said, the chances of that you potentially or someone is potentially fighting someone that is doing something is, it's probably happened. And like I was sort of touched on with going into that fight, it was sort of put forward enough that, I made the decision to rehydrate and get to a bit of a heavier weight. I walked into the cage on that fight I was 77 kilos. So I walked in at the weight that you weigh in for welterweight, and I was fighting a featherweight.
Yeah.
Just on the off that, I knew that if I take this guy down, I'm in a position where I'm on top of him. He's carrying a lot of weight, and it's going to sap him and it's going to just drain him. And especially if you're doing something that you're not meant to be doing, like you're going to fade a lot quicker and your gas tank's going to fade a lot quicker.
But it fucking must be scary to know that you're potentially going up against those kind of people.
Not really.
You're not scared?
No, because I feel like, I don't care what you're doing or like if I wrap my arm around your neck, like that's it.
Is that why they call you Lockjaw?
I think so.
Yes, sir.
Well, the boys collectively kind of.
How'd that nickname come about? Was it how many submissions had you had before someone said, dude, you're like just Lockjaw?
It just happened in one of the camps, one of Volk's camps. I think we were getting ready. He was getting ready for Ortega, and then I just come in the one day, and the boys were just like, "We got to change your fight name."
Have you submitted Volk in training?
Not even close. Like, even the times where I've gotten a position like on his back or something, and I'm like trying to go for something, and in my head I'm like, am I getting this? And then I'll just feel like a comfortable little breath out, like and then next thing he's on top of me, punch my head in, and I'm like, I swear that felt like it was good, like that. And that's just a collective thing. Like, nah, not even close. Like,
do you feel like you contributed in some small way to Volk's ability to wriggle out of those triangles and guillotines that Ortega got him in?
I hope so, because he was being put in all those positions. Like he would start with like locked in guillotines and Darce chokes, and we'd start with a locked in submission. We'd be squeezing with everything, fully locked in as deep as it can be, and we'd squeeze with everything we can, trying to submit this bloke, and you just couldn't do it.
Why is it? Is it because he's got a thick neck? Is it because he's just strong?
Built like a bowling ball with arm.
Or is it a combination of that and his technical ability?
It's technique. It's the way his he's built like he's obviously a thick guy. His neck's gigantic, and like, it's the years of training, the years of doing it, being comfortable in those positions, the stuff that Joe puts us through, that he's been put through for years and stuff like that. Like, it's all of those, and it's at the end of the day, he's just got that dog in him, that mongrel. If it comes down to it, like, I think it's hard for people to appreciate because he is so vastly ahead with fight IQ and his skill set, and he's just levels above people. But I think if you took him into a lab and made like a copy of him and you made them fight, he'd have that edge because he's got that mongrel in him. He's got that no quit.
But also his body shape, like he's got, and for his height, his reach is a little bit abnormally long as well.
I believe so, yeah.
And I was talking about it with someone the other day, like there's a lot of really amazing athletes like that. Like I'm a surfer, so Kelly Slater, he's the same height as me, but he's got this freakish arm length. So obviously that makes him, he can paddle into waves really. He's an amazing paddler. I seen him in the surf once and watched Kelly Slater paddle, and I was like, the guy's just moving because he's got this arm, he's got this reach. And then there's like, I was talking about someone else the other day who's got it as well. I can't remember. Like Mike Tyson had a really big reach for a short guy. So I think there's something to the biomechanics of him as well. But listen, we all want him to beat Islam Makhachev in UFC 284. What are your predictions for how that fight's going to go? What do you reckon? Full 5 rounds?
No, I thoroughly think that Volk's going to put him away in the 4th. I feel like he's going to by then
knock him out.
Yeah,
or TKO.
Yeah, knockout TKO. I feel like 3 rounds, and it's someone that's got a very wrestling heavy, grappling heavy sort of style. If for 3 rounds you're trying to put someone on their back and control them there, and it's not easy, and they're constantly getting up, and you're constantly trying. There's very few people that can do that physically without, your body's just eventually letting you down. Yeah. I have no doubt Islam can probably grapple and wrestle for 25 minutes, but can he do it with the mental weight and frustration that things aren't going his way? Right. Because he's never experienced that type of adversity in the cage outside of a knockout earlier in his UFC
What
career.
if Islam grabs Volk in the first round while they're dry? Do you think that's going to be Volk's biggest concern?
I actually think, for me personally, I think that that's obviously Islam's best chance. Is in round 1, you dry, get a hold of him, and then do your best, try and do your best work and try and get him out of there and get him out of there with a submission, because he's not going to be able to touch him on the feet and knock him out. He's not going to be able to land a significant shot that's going to put him in danger, because I just don't see that being a thing. I think, round 1, take him down, get a hold of him, you dry, and that's potentially your best chance at securing your victory. But I actually think that later on in the fight, if Volk is in an exchange with him, in a grappling exchange, and this is like you'd see with some other fighters, if he just had a big lapse in, I don't know, whatever thought process and just went whatever, and then just started grappling, or started grappling with Islam but without caution, and put himself in danger and gave Islam that window to maybe throw up a submission or something kind of like we saw with Ortega, throwing up a last minute submission off the back. Outside of that, I don't see there being any danger. Outside of, I really think round 1 is going to be the biggest sort of danger for Volk in the fight, because you're dry, and obviously it's a lot easier to get a hold of someone, and a lot easier, and you're fresh. Everyone's fresh in the first round. Everyone's Superman in the first round. And obviously you're dry, and he's got a good squeeze on him. So if you can get to an established position, obviously that's going to be a problem and some adversity. But I thoroughly think that from round 2 onwards, Volk's just going to piece him apart. And then
like what he did with Max Holloway 3 fight.
Just piece him up.
God, and then, he stuck to his game plan so good in that fight.
But I think even before that, in round 1, you're going to have all these questions and all these things that people are saying about the fight. That's going to be answered very quickly in that first round, because it's going to come from that first exchange of grappling. If Islam takes him down, and controls him. And, you know, Volk gets out of that round and like, oh mate, did his best work, like took him down, controlled him, but wasn't able to do anything and wasn't able to put him away. That there's the first bit of adversity for Islam mentally, where he's going to be like, I just did my best work. The thing I'm known for didn't work.
Yeah. And
that's going to start factoring in. Yeah. And then, but I thoroughly believe if Islam shoots in round one, Volk stuffs it or gets taken down and then bounces straight back up, that's it.
Yeah.
The fight's over.
Okay.
Volk's going to beat the shit out of him.
Yes, sir.
Because then he's going to like know that mentally Islam's going to be like, oh, what? Like, I was so set, and my whole team and my coaches and everyone and we've all been, and the whole world is like, if he gets him on the ground, that's it. So now think of you thinking that, but you're not just like have to factor that into your brain and go, my thing I'm known for isn't working. Yeah. I just tried it, it didn't work.
That's going to break his confidence.
And now you have to stand up against the best fighter on planet Earth in the sport. I don't know about you, but mentally that's going to be a big fucking hurdle to get over. Like,
sure.
Okay, I just tried my best thing. That didn't work. Okay, I'll go to my next best thing, which isn't on the same level as Volk. Like it just isn't.
No. But I was just thinking, man, I wonder what the betting odds are on Volk submitting Islam. Like, imagine that happened. Have you had to look?
I think it's going to... It's
almost worth I reckon it's worth putting a few bucks on, dude.
I reckon it's entirely
seriously,
possible,
like
in the fourth. I'll be honest, I'm going to bet on a round 4 TKO. That's my bet I'm going for. Because
that's insane.
To win at the moment, Volk's like a $3.80 underdog.
Gotcha. Yeah,
which is ridiculous because Charles Simon spoke on this, like, why are people continuously saying that, if Volk wins, it's going to be an upset? How is the number one pound-for-pound fighter on earth beating the number 2 guy an upset? It'd be an upset if Islam beats Volk.
I agree.
That's an upset.
Yeah. They just keep referring to size. They just go, he's smaller than him. It's like, yeah, but whatever. It doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter. They're going to be the same weight.
People have asked me, they're like, like, how do you think it's going to go? And like, what are you going to do? I told them I'm betting on him to win, and I'm betting on him to knock him out in the 4th round.
Yeah,
TKO, KO in the 4th. Like, I think the longer the fight goes, the more adversity Islam has to deal with.
Yeah.
The more challenges he has to face mentally of him trying something and not working. So it's almost like a pyramid, right? At the top, you're going to have your best thing. You have your best attribute, your best skill. You're going to try and go with that. That doesn't work. Now you go to your next best thing. That doesn't work. Now you go to the next thing. But your best thing, in his case, is your grappling, your wrestling, which is the only part of the sport and of the game that you might be a bit more adept in. But the separation between your grappling and wrestling and Volk's is a lot smaller than your separation with all his other attributes and skills.
That's the best point.
Because people talk...
That's the best point.
People talk about, you need like 20 years of wrestling and grappling to be able to like deal with someone like Islam who's been doing it his whole life.
Yeah.
Well, you need to be able to do that for the striking and to have the fight IQ that Volk has and to deal with all his other attributes. Like you don't have... this camp isn't long enough for you to figure those things out. I don't care who you bring in.
Exactly.
Like I keep seeing the narrative that you can't bring anyone in to emulate Islam. Well, you definitely can't bring anyone in to emulate Volk.
Yes, sir. It's so true.
Everything that the points I'm seeing people make and the things I'm saying, well, it's like it goes the same the other way, but it's like amplified.
Yeah. The only thing with the Dagestanis that I don't hear people talk about too much, and they're renowned for their strength. I mean, and you're a wrestler, and they're renowned for they've got this next level wrestling. We all know that, but the actual country that they train in is at altitude. And I wonder if that's giving them that different edge in terms of strength. Training at altitude constantly.
It's a factor.
And sorry to jump in, but I experienced it a little bit when I went to Nepal and I hiked to Mount Everest Base Camp, which is a big hike, at high altitudes, and we had Sherpas and stuff. And when you're with those guys, then they all live at altitude, but
different level.
They are just the strongest humans, innately deeply strong people. What they were carrying, like 100 kilos on their back through the most gnarly shit, and so it just makes me think. That's all.
Altitude's a factor. I mean, I think
you reckon.
Yeah, Johannesburg's
Oh, you grew up at altitude.
I grew up at altitude, and I think
maybe that's why there's a commonality there.
I think that shaped.
And you're a wrestler
because I've always had good, I think, cardio and stuff like that. I've never really. I mean, I could obviously, if I were to take like 6 months off, I'd be, obviously I'd come in and you're not going to be at the same level as you are when you're like in fight shape.
Yeah.
But if I need to like get in and do something, I'm going to get through. I think my cardio is always going to just be there.
100%. It's just like this base level that's above.
And then you factor in what we do at Freestyle to get ready for fights. Like I know that when I'm going into my fights at Freestyle, like I'll never lose a fight based on my cardio.
The cardio is not going to. The cardio that happens in a fight is never going to be as gnarly as what you've done.
Not at all. So
those lactic sessions, dude.
If I have to, like, if I lose a fight,
yeah,
and I know it's not going to be because I just wasn't in shape.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something you should never lose a fight on because that's in your control completely.
Yeah.
Like that's nothing. You can just get there. You don't have to. You might lose because someone's better than you. They might out-grapple you. They might outstrike you. They might clip you or knock you out. They might catch you with a submission. And, man, okay. But, like, they just did something better and executed it and got you. But if you were to lose just because you weren't in shape, man, that's on you. That would suck even more.
That would suck.
Because you just go, okay, well, I just didn't do enough.
Speaking of doing enough, like you had your title defense coming up, you know, and I've been, training at Freestyle as well and just watching what you guys do. It's insane. And you were like peaking, you could tell. You look great. What's happened?
Yeah,
talk us through it.
Obviously, I was meant to fight February 11th against Rod Costa on Eternal. I was meant to headline the event, which is the night before the UFC, so it's probably the biggest, I guess, event in Australian MMA in like a while, obviously because it's the first time the UFC is back in a long time. And then, you got all those extra eyes on you, potentially got... And
Eternal fights are presented under the UFC Fight Pass as well.
So they've got a relationship with that. And, the UFC has been pretty clear that the places where they have these established connections with like a promotion in an area, they're using that as like to build up the sport. And that's what they're watching. They're definitely watching. And if you look at Eternal, like how many people from Eternal now have won a championship, then moved on to bigger and better things, it's the secret, like the proof's in the pudding. Like if you win a title in Eternal, you fight on that promotion, you get that exposure, you've got those eyes on you, you're going to eventually get to where you want to get to. But yeah, so I was scheduled to fight February 11th against Rod Costa, and then I probably 3 weeks ago now or 2 weeks ago now, I was at a sparring session, normal Saturday sparring in the morning, having some rounds, doing my thing, just having some good rounds. I was having a round with one of my training partners with Colby. We were just moving around, nothing, just doing our normal sparring. Just getting after it, getting some good work in. Threw a kick, and in some weird way, like the top of my foot, my right foot collided with his kneecap and just shattered my second metatarsal in my foot. Just completely broke it.
Yeah, I've seen the X-ray. That's gnarly.
So obviously that's ruled me out for my fight, and it's been something that I've known about obviously since it happened, but we've kind of had to keep quiet with while we were waiting to see what they were going to do, and obviously Eternal needing to see if they were going to try and find a replacement for Rod, or and so I couldn't, outside of like people at the gym and the people that I'm around every day, like in the big picture of things, like no one actually knew that I was out of the fight. And then with Eternal now earlier this week announcing the new main event that they've put together, and they've found a replacement for Rod, and he's fighting a guy from Absolute who Colby fought in his last fight, Semkade Kakembo.
Yeah.
Who's a talented kid. I think he's 5-1 now, and as a pro, who's only lost being to Colby. So they've thrown together a replacement fight, and then obviously I could put a thing out and let people know that I'm not fighting as well. And, I wrote something out on my Instagram and just put it out there that I wasn't fighting, and put it out there that I've sustained an injury, and I threw the X-rays up there just because I don't need to justify anything for anyone, but I just wanted to be as transparent as I can and be like, I'm out with this injury, so and then knowing that my position is solidified based on the work that I did, and especially last year the work that I did, I'm going to fight the winner of that fight. So that's something I'll have my eye on. But I was happy that they were able to establish a sort of replacement fight, and that's credit to Rod himself, because he doesn't have to give up his position. He could have just said, no, I'll just wait for Justin to heal up. But he's just a game. He's a game guy. He just likes to fight, likes to get in there.
So he's actually potentially jeopardising a title fight.
Yeah. 100%.
Because if he loses, then he won't get a shot at you.
But in saying that too, it takes away the chance for him to potentially go for like a double champ thing, which hasn't been done in Eternal. Okay. But also, I can sort of see the motive. Like, he just likes to fight. He's just game and wants to fight. But at the same time, like, if he goes there, loses, doesn't get the title fight with me, he's still the bantamweight champion. Yeah, gotcha. So, his stock doesn't drop in any way. He just goes on, defends his bantamweight title a few times, and he's going to set himself up quite nicely. But for his opponent, for Kakembo, it's a great opportunity, because he can potentially go out there, beat Rod, and now he's fighting me for my featherweight title. So it's a big opportunity and a great sort of position for him to be in. And it's intriguing to me to see how it's going to play out and to find out who I'm actually going to fight. The rematch with Rod was a no-brainer for me. Like, initially, I said it straight away on the night after I won the title, and I was like, Joe and I were already kind of like established that that's the fight I'm going to go for. Yeah. Because, I want to get that one back. Because I've got 3 losses at featherweight. I just beat Diego, so I redeemed that one. Rod beat me. That's my last loss at featherweight. So my last 6 fights, I'm 5-1. With my last year, like, I went 4-0, so I didn't, and just had like 3 finishes. So I'm obviously on a tear in that. But that's the only loss on my record that I wanted back, because I know that I just didn't perform. I didn't show up. I didn't perform. I didn't do what I know I could do. And Rod was just. Rod beat me. He was better that night. He found the route to victory, and I didn't. And I know that. And it's the only loss I look at that really stings me, because I know I just didn't turn up. It's not like I can look at some of my other fights that I've lost and I can go, the dude was better on the night, but I did everything possible in there to try and win. Didn't go my way. All right, we'll work on it. We'll rebuild. We'll keep going. Whereas with that fight, I'm like, I just didn't turn up. Yeah. And obviously it's no secret, I wanted that fight back. So because people are like, why would you, It's a win-win for him, because he can fight you for your title. If he loses, he's still the bantamweight champ, but I just wanted that one back. Yep. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see how the fight turns out between those 2 guys. But, whether I get Rod or Kakembo, it doesn't matter who it is. When, I'm back in there, like, I'm fighting one of those 2 guys. Yeah. And defending my belt, that's it. I'm going to defend my belt. And then I feel like I've already, solidified myself as the number 1 featherweight in the region. Yeah. But, defending my title on Eternal and, sort of fighting either one of those guys is going to just put an even bigger stamp on it. On your next, to help your next move. To set up my next move. Just to solidify it. To really solidify. Like, I try and, I said this sort of a few times last year, like, I didn't, because I was fighting so often, I was just back-to-back getting in there and fighting. And even now, I didn't really I still really haven't given myself a chance to stop and smell the roses. Like, obviously, I understand what I did last year, and I had a massive year and, won the featherweight title and, like, the biggest promotion in the region. But to be honest, I was kind of like, okay, cool. Like, let's just move to the next thing. Yeah. But, like, I know if I sit here and on paper, if I put it down and I lay it down, I can say, okay, I've done that. I wanted to make myself undeniable. I wanted to establish myself as the number 1 in the region, and I've done that. Yeah. But now we just got to keep going. Just keep going. Just keep working. Just keep putting it in. It's amazing. And I just, like I said, I'm so inspired and I love what you do. And I ask all guests this question. It's kind of a new question I've come up with, because I just really think it's something all people should think about in their life. And I guess my question to you is, like, at this stage in your life, what would you like to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy to be in this life? For me, I think, obviously, I have my own sort of personal things that I want to tick off and achieve. And like I said, when it comes to this sport, it's nothing short of a world championship. That's my goal. The second I won my first Australian title, I was like, cool, I got an Australian title. That's off the list. Now I've won my second one with Eternal. As cool as that is, like, I couldn't really care less. I want a world title. That's the next goal, is a world title. But
a personal level.
But more, and probably a more important thing is I just want to continue to set an example for my daughter that goes, no matter what you want to do, no matter what you want to pursue, if you're passionate about it and you just throw yourself into it and you go after it, you know, that's the main thing. I want her to look at what I'm doing and go, you know what? If she wants to be the best painter in the world, I couldn't care less. I don't care what she wants to do and pursue. I just want her to know that if you really do it, you pursue it, you're passionate about it, you have the right sort of setup and connection and people around you, you can do anything you want to do. And if that somehow translates and impacts someone else and inspires someone else, then that's cool. But at the end of the day, for me on a personal level, I just want to be remembered as someone that went after what I was passionate about. I gave it 110%. And I set the best example possible for my daughter because she's a tiny little human being that I've got to show the world and got to try and like set up with the best possible chance to go out there and succeed. So that's bigger than fighting. And that's probably my bigger motivation as to why I think my success in the sport has skyrocketed in recent times as well, is because, you know, being a dad is a big motivating factor.
Yes, sir. Yes, bro. I actually said it to my daughter just the other day. She just turned 8. She loves art and she loves like creative arts and stuff like that. And I'm trying to get her into surfing, and she's actually really good at it early, and she loves it, you know. But she doesn't really care too much about it, you know. But I'm just like, darling, I don't care what you do, just do it the best you can. Whatever you choose to do, be the best. Or try. Oh no, not be the best. Try your best and do the best you can. And that was something that was said to me as a kid as well, and I love that philosophy. Yeah, so thanks, man.
Well, it just comes back to like you know, my parents always just wanted to know that I have something to fall back on, and then you can just pursue whatever you want. So yeah, you know, that's sort of the same approach. You just find something that you can fall back on, then that thing that you're passionate about, that dream that you have or that thing that you want to pursue, you can do it with the comfort knowing that I can do this 110%, I can give it my best, and no matter what happens, I've got other things to fall back on, other passions to fall back on.
But also that mentality, like, is going to translate into other aspects of your life, you know, and when the fight career comes to an end, which it will, you know, that mentality that you've developed through all the discipline and commitment and things like problem solving and just hustling to survive, like, you know, maintain an income so you can keep training and things like that. You know, like, you're going to be able to translate all those, I guess, skills into whatever your next life move is, and you'll be successful at that as well, I think. And me and Chelsea were talking about that. You know, like, this is what you're learning. You're acquiring all these. What's the word for it? I guess more difficult to define skills. Yeah, soft skills maybe. Your hard skills are all your fighting technical stuff, but those soft skills transferable.
Well,
beautiful.
That's the thing. I think. Yeah, I know. Obviously, I'm focused on, you know, pursuing the sport and doing what I can do. But I know that post my fight career, you know, I'm going to be set up to do whatever that next thing is, whether it's the broadcasting side of things,
podcasting. Yeah, because you got a podcast.
I do have a podcast,
dude. Let's talk about it. Come on.
But so obviously, I do a podcast, an MMA podcast or combat sports podcast with my friend Dan Meehan, who's my co-host, and we do Fight Talk Down Under.
Talk Down Under.
Yeah, so we're going to kick back off for this, like, start off with our first podcast for the year next week. But yeah, it's just, you know, it's an idea that Dan presented to me at the start of last year. We were talking about it, and he was like, you know, I want to, like, you know, because he works for the One Championship now as a writer and stuff like that, and, you know, he does stuff with Fight News Australia, and then he put it forward to me like, hey man, I want to do a podcast, like, you want to try and do it? Do you want to, like, get involved? And I'm always, you know, I was always pretty keen to do that. So we started that, and it's been super cool. And I think
it's one of the fastest growing sports in Australia and the world.
Yeah,
perfect timing.
And it's fun doing that. And I mean, I've never been someone that struggled to do any sort of, like, public speaking or anything like that. And I think that stems from being involved in sport, in all the possible sort of sports that you could be involved in, doing all that sort of stuff. And then, you know, with working as a journalist and stuff like that, and covering sport, being in front of, like, camera, having to talk to individuals, interview people, having, like, constant conversations, not even on camera, like, just having to talk to people. You've done that? Yeah.
So was that your degree at uni? Oh, you did a journalism degree. I didn't ask you that, sorry.
So that's, I mean, and that's, you know, that's what I sort of touched on before. That's something I know I can fall back on post-fighting. But yeah, the podcasting side of things is super cool. I'm well aware that the more I pursue the sport, the further I get into the sport, the more I establish myself, and especially when you're fighting in the UFC and stuff like that, all of that's going to factor in, and that other avenue is going to sort of increase and keep going. So I can pursue that. I can start doing analyst work post-fighting, like commentary. Who knows? Like I have all those avenues and doors that.
Who's your favourite MMA journalist? Do you have one? Because I personally like that guy that does the Mac Life.
Oh, yep.
I like that dude. He's independent.
Yeah, that's a great page.
I love all the independent ones. Yeah.
There's a few people like that like that sort of. But I think in terms of like purely MMA and covering the sport and the athletes, someone like Ariel Helwani is a big favourite of mine, and especially in more recent times, like seeing him, he's established and set himself up in a way where he's almost a necessity, and especially for the UFC. If you look at like the MMA and the people he gets on, and like the constant athletes.
Why do you think he's necessary?
I think because he sticks to his guns.
And is it because he is independent? He's not owned by anyone.
Nah,
that's a big thing.
That's a big thing, and also his willingness to keep pursuing something and asking like the questions. Like he's the type of guy that like will have John Jones on his show and be like, "So John, why'd you hit your wife?"
Yeah.
Like he'll dive straight. If he had Dana, like him and Dana aren't really, from what I can see,
Dana hates him.
Yeah, they hate each other, or they're not fans of each other. But say Dana White was to come on his show, the first thing he'd ask would be like, he'd dive right in, like he doesn't. Yeah. And that's what I like about him. And he does the same thing with fighters when they win, when they lose. Like he'll just ask the questions that people want to dance around and dart around.
I actually like that Ariel guy because he puts shit on other journalists. Like when Dana White, came out about slapping his wife, which he fully owned. You can't really fault him on that.
Yeah.
But Ariel called out TMZ because they were trying to make excuses on Dana's behalf. And Dana actually even said afterwards, don't make excuses for me.
Yeah.
But he was just like, you fucking idiot. He didn't say it like this, but he's like, you fucking idiots. Like, trying to give Dana an out because it was New Year's Eve and they were drunk, and he's bold. And it's hard to be bold sometimes.
And you got to be like, I'm pretty outspoken and stuff like that. And
you speak well, man.
There's times where me, just saying something and being authentic and just whatever is just like it's not always transpired into like a positive outcome. And there's been times where it's kind of like negatively affected something, but at least I still kept my authenticity. And for some people, I think sometimes that's hard to deal with someone who is like that. And it doesn't gel and click with some people, and that's fine. Like you can't expect.
Have you had that?
I've had that happen.
Do you mind if I ask, was it with a journalist or was it on a podcast? Because you've been on a lot of podcasts.
I've had it happen with my own, like being on like someone else's podcast. I've had it dealing with people. I've had it talking to other fighters. Where I've like even doing my own podcast, that was a big eye opener for me. Where I'm breaking down these fights, and then I'm breaking it down like independently from my own sort of thing as a fighter and as someone who might know some of these people, especially on the regional scene. Like I'm looking at these matchups stylistically and giving an authentic breakdown of like how I think the fight's going to go based on the stylistic matchup that's presented to me. Sometimes that does just. There's someone I might know or someone that is fighting or that I have a connection to or a relationship with, I'm probably like looking at the fight stylistically going like, oh yeah, they're going to kill it. Like this matches up well for them. But there's other times where it doesn't, and I've picked against people that I know, people that I've even friendships with, and for the most part, people have like taken it, pretty good. But there's been times where people haven't. But it's an easy situation for me to give my like a completely unbiased prediction on a fight based on the evidence that's presented to me on paper, and I can look at the fights and how they match up and go, okay. And this actually, then I say it doesn't go the way I predict it to go, and that person ends up winning. I'm the first person that's going to be, because we'll do the next week's episode. I'm the first person that's going to be like, well, my prediction didn't pan out.
Yeah.
I'm not ever just like, and I
but
think
you're
people
not trying to offend.
No, I'm just being authentic. I'm being authentic and going, looking at this fight, his attributes and what he's able to do versus this person's attributes or her attributes versus her attributes. I think this fight's going to go this way.
But I find MMA fans are so, like, it's just really easily controversial. I'll never forget, man, I wrote a comment Like, I mean, I'm not an MMA guy. I'm really just a fairly new fan of the last few years. I'm just a fan of the sport. I'm a fan of the athletes and the elitism that they are. But I remember I wrote a comment on a Paddy Pimblett post. It was a UFC ANZ post, and it was when Paddy Pimblett wouldn't shake Jordan Levette's hand, you know, and I just wrote a casual comment like, like that's, would I say bad karma, or, you know, something like that. Like, it's a good way to lose a fight by not shaking hands or something like that, you know. And literally for months afterwards, because he beat Jordan Levette, I had people writing me negative comments, DMing me aggressive shit, you know, going to my message requests because they were abusive messages and stuff. And I'm just like, wow, a different sort of vibe.
Well, MMA is weird for that, like fans and fighters and stuff like that. So, but outside of the, you know, that's the thing I said to Dan was, I was like, I'm not gonna, and he's the same way. Like, I'm not gonna ever I'm not here to people please, just because you're like, I can't just try and make everyone happy. I can't break down a fight and go, well, this person's going to win, and then also talk about their opponent and go, well, they're going to win because of this. Like, I've got to be authentic and go really speak on how I think the fight's going to go.
That's the only way to live, bro.
And he's the same. And I think if you look at it, like, and even now doing the podcast for all of last year, like, when we're like 30 odd episodes in or something, like, we vibe and gel together real nicely. And then I think, because he's the same. Like, we just kind of, you know, I'll make a prediction on a fight. If it pans out, then whatever. If it doesn't, then I'll go, well, damn, they showed me. Like, for example, when Dave Martinez fought for the title against Aiden Aguilera.
In Eternal?
On Eternal.
Yeah.
You know, Dave's someone that I have a relationship with who comes down to freestyle.
He's a lightweight champion, isn't he? Yeah.
He's the current lightweight champ. Someone I have a friendship with, someone I have a connection with. And I picked against him in that fight because I was breaking down the fight and I was looking at it stylistically of, you know, looking at Aiden's fights and looking at his fights and looking at both guys' skill sets and kind of the way I sort of saw the fight. I was like, man, I think Aiden's going to be able to stuff what Dave's going to present to him, and he's going to go out there and he's going to win. Dave went out there and shut him down completely, ended up finishing him and winning the belt. And I actually, you know, like, Dave messaged me and was like, oh, like, man, you picked against me. And I've got to be like, man, I can't, like, that's how I saw the fight going. I can't always just pick someone just because I'm friends with them or I know them. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to be, like, honest with how I see a fight going. And I say this to people too. If, like, obviously, because you can bet on fights for Eternal as well with Neds and stuff like that. But even when I'm in the UFC, obviously, you can be able to bet on my fights and stuff like that. If you don't think I'm going to win, I don't care if my own mum is like, I don't think you're going to win this fight. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Bet. I want you to make the best call and best decision that you honestly feel. Don't people think like people always tell me like and I can tell sometimes, like, even last year, like, there's a few times with fights where I would be like talking to people and I can tell that they're just like, don't think I'm gonna win. Yeah. And if you go and look at the odds before all my fights last year, except my fight for Diego, I was like a heavy underdog in every single fight. So on the betting odds and that too. So, like, I made it a point to put up the betting odds that Ned's put up before the fight, after I'd won. And then, you know, and I had like people sending me their betting slips that are cashed in and made money on betting on my fight, that obviously won money and stuff. And that's cool to see. But I always tell people, like, I don't care, man, like, you can, if you don't think I'm going to win a fight and you feel like you need to bet money on the other guy or you need to pick the other person because you think that they're going to beat me, I'm fine. And that's not a negative thing. Like, and especially if there's one thing to do it, just think someone's going to, like, do better and beat me in a fight, and you don't want to, like, say that because you feel like you're my friend or you have a connection with me and you don't want to, like, be honest or whatever. But there's a difference when there's money involved. Like, if you're someone who's betting on sports and betting on fights and you're using your own hard-earned money, don't worry about me and how I'm going to think or feel. Like, if you feel like the best way to spend your money is on the other guy, do it. Yeah, 100%. But going back to what you said about people pleasing, I just think in general in life, it's just no way to live. It's impossible. It's also, and like, you'll never be able to please everyone all the time. No, and if you think you can, you'll drive yourself to insanity. So, but it's a real common thing. Like, we do innately want people to validate us and like us and stuff like that. But I think
most successful people are really good at not letting that control them. So, I mean, it's nice when people are happy with what you're saying or doing, you know, and I get it's something I've actually had to deal with as well in this little podcast journey. You know, I get people have some big opinions on some of the topics we talk about, and they're vastly different to mine, and you make yourself vulnerable and you put yourself in a position to be criticised, and that takes courage, which I think is something that you, my friend, do not lack at all. So you got a lot of courage, bro. I can feel it.
But I think that also, you know, like we were touching on before, that all comes back from everything in your life that you've gone through and like felt and experienced, and then how that factors in and how you let that affect you.
Yeah.
Because even, I think a big thing that's not sort of touched on enough is even negative experiences can be a positive development in your life as a person and as an individual. Like if you have a shitty situation, like I'll be honest, even in the sport and stuff like that, like there's certainly been through the years, like since started getting involved in MMA and that, like I've burnt bridges with people. I've done some stupid shit, especially when I was younger. Like,
do you own it though?
Yeah.
You say sorry?
100%. You know, and you know, whether that's going to, you know, remedy it in some way, and eventually, you know, if you've done something like, you know, you've done something that's like burnt a bridge with someone, or you've messed up, you've done something stupid, like you act like an idiot or whatever, you take ownership of it, you apologize. If eventually it leads to, you know, some sort of positive outcome and you can reestablish a connection with someone or something like that, fine. If not, it's about how you let it affect you individually moving forward. Can you take that and turn it into something that's positive and it's going to benefit you? Or can you just go, I messed up, act like an idiot, whatever, I said sorry, it is what it is, and then you don't take the opportunity to learn from it and grow from it.
Fuck yeah, dude. And I think making a sincere amends when you're wrong and making a sincere amends to someone, one that I've learned over the years that it's such a powerful life hack in terms of improving mental health. And trying to, let's say you're in a negative interaction with someone, even if that person's been a dick, but you forget, you don't think about that, but just think about what's my part in this? How have I behaved? Forget about them, because you can't control people, places or things, but you can control your own behaviour and own that behaviour. And every time I've done it, it always, not always, a lot of the time has a more than a positive outcome, and often can establish an even stronger connection with that person moving forward, and amazing things can grow from that.
100%.
But it comes down to that. Am I brave enough to have that humility, swallow the ego, look at where I fucked up and own it? I mean, it's hard, but if you can do it, you're going to win at life, in my opinion.
And you have to kind of do that. Like
and I don't do it well at all, just putting it out there. I still fuck up all the time.
I'm a far cry from the ideal individual that I'm trying to work towards being. And it comes back to like working on yourself in those areas and doing those things. Like I'm trying to improve and work on these things that are still areas in my life and as a person where I'm kind of like, I can do better. I need to do better. I need to work on this a bit more. I need to, you know, work on myself a bit more. It's a constant journey and it's like a weekly thing, but it's something that really amplified for me in more recent times that like, okay, you need to work on yourself and your quality of life's going to be better. And then it's also going to allow you to, like you said, deal with people in a better way. So if you are having a negative interaction with someone, you're a lot more self-reflectant on yourself and, okay, well, did I unintentionally or intentionally do something that's, you know, causing this outcome? And then you can take a step back. And, you know, since becoming a dad, and now it's like my daughter, you know, she's 2 now, and she's becoming her own little person. And, you know, she's just like, it's kind of like, I look at situations with her and I'm just like, man, if I can't deal, like, I'm trying to deal with a tiny human being who can't always tell you exactly what she needs and wants and stuff like that, and that must be so challenging. And you see sort of some of the struggles that she has, you know, because little kids, like, they constantly have little challenges, and they will try to tell you something or trying to relay something to you, and you're not picking up on it. You look at that and then you go, okay, if like that's challenging, if I can't see another human being's point of view and perspective who can talk and use full sentences and is capable of communicating, who's an adult,
Yeah.
Like, that should be easy. If I can't do that, I'm a piece of shit. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's hard, man.
It's because, like, you got to apply those things and with how you deal with people. And then, obviously, like you sort of said, people are going to have a way that they take things and approach things. How are you looking back at the situation and going, maybe I could have communicated that a bit better. Maybe I could have, maybe this whole situation would have turned out a lot better if I just took a step back and went, hey, Justin, reel it in. You're
looking at your partner.
You're not approaching this the right way.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's, and that's a daily thing that you're going to go through your whole life. You're constantly going to have to do that.
So you have that consciousness about, you've already developed this level of consciousness that you of self-reflection. I mean, a lot of people don't have that mindset, and that's ignorance.
It's a recent thing too for me. I'll be honest.
Is it?
It's a relatively recent thing to be looking at it from that perspective and be more like have more of a reflection within myself and go, I need to work on myself, but also like I need to think about these things and do that. I'm in two senses. I'm like, I should have been doing this a long time ago and taking the time to do that and reflect on these things and reflect on myself as an individual. But at the same time, I'm like happy that I am doing that.
Yeah.
Because I can already see since, that it's how it's led to sort of a better ability to communicate with people, a better ability to figure out which relationships, friendships, things in my life I need and what I don't need.
Yeah.
And people are afraid to sort of look at this with an honest perspective. When you start working on yourself and actively making the decision that you need to make these improvements across the board, that's when you can really appreciate other people in your life, if they're going to be a benefit to you and if they're a healthy thing to have in your life or if they're not. And it's going to make the decision for you to go, this is something I need in my life or this is something I don't need. And you can be realistic with yourself about it and go, this relationship or this friendship or this interaction is a benefit to me in my life and it's gonna be a positive impact on what I got going on and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be a simple fact of I need to remove this from my life because it's actually a negative energy, a negative impact, a negative thing that's sucking away from me and like taking away from me. And I think that's hard for people to do, especially because if you don't reflect on yourself as an individual and you don't work on yourself and try and fix yourself and do those things, how can you cut someone else out or cut someone else off if they're potentially a negative aspect in your life? Because you'd be sitting there going, well, who am I to talk? Because I don't even look at myself. I don't get up in the morning and go, hey, man, we need to do better. So how can I then tell someone else that they're not fit to be part of my life, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. So that's a very good point. It's true. And it's true. Like when they say, when you point the finger of judgment, you're actually pointing two fingers back at yourself, So it's a good point, bro. I love it. And
that's, I think, another factor that's benefiting me in my actual pursuit of this sport because I'm being so proactive in working on myself and improving other areas of my life that it's actually translating to the things that I'm passionate about and good at, which like fighting. Yeah, but the thing is, with the fighting, like you really, to be good at it, you have to be living an optimal lifestyle. Like it's diet, it's exercise, it's hydration, it's sleep. And you're functioning at your physical best. And I just think a natural transition or progression from that is to develop a high level of intellect, emotional intelligence, spirituality maybe, and you become more conscious. And I think that's why I'm so attracted to the athletes in this sport is because everyone I meet, they're just these like next level humans who are just really living their best lives or trying to be the best version of themselves. And MMA is just a catalyst for that. And like you said, it's a full package. It's physical, but it's all very much, probably predominantly psychological. So you've got to get your psychological game intact, man. Otherwise, it's never going to translate in the ring. Yeah. So yeah, man, that's a full testament to you, bro. You're doing it right, man. Big respect. But I also love how you're putting your daughter, everything comes back to you. How can I be the best example for my daughter? That's beautiful, bro. That's my biggest, my biggest factor. Dude, that was like same for me. Like one of the best things I ever did was 2 years before my daughter was born, before we even were pregnant, I decided to stop drinking alcohol or taking any drugs or just clean living,
And, you know, like I'm now 10 years without any sort of like drinking, you know, and my daughter has, you know, she's never seen me drunk, you know, and I just think it's the best example that I can ever give my daughter. That, and she says to me, "Oh, Dad, you're so strong and you've got big muscles." And Dad, you know, they're picking up on these things, and then she'll say to me, "Oh, Dad, you don't drink beer or wine like the other adults." She says that to me. Like, they pick up on these things.
That's,
you know, these are, for me. Sorry to cut in, but these are the gifts, bro, of leading such a healthy and strong lifestyle.
well, people say that about kids that, like, you know, until you sort of have a kid of your own, you don't really get a true sort of understanding of it. But man, they're so perceptive of everything. Like, my daughter's 2, but picks up on everything. She's very clever. She
for sure.
She knows. She clicks on things. She knows things. She's picking up on things. Like, she will. There'll be like, if something's on the TV, if you're scrolling through YouTube, and as you're looking for something on YouTube, if a clip pops up of like anything relating to fighting, she'll just start pointing at the screen going, "Dada, dada, dada," because she understands that I do that. I drive past the gym with her in the car, and she'll be like, "Dada, dada," and she'll point and go, and she understands, like, that's the gym, that's where Daddy goes to.
Yeah,
that's what he does. Like, and even then, like, she'll sometimes I'll just be doing something around the house, or we'll be getting ready to go to the park or something like that, and she'll do something or respond with something that lets me know immediately that she's perceptive of everything that's going on around her.
Yeah.
Like, and then you go, "Oh shit!" Like, if this tiny little human is picking up on these things, then holy crap! Like, it's everything factors in.
Dude, it's gnarly, and it's a big responsibility. But I'll tell you, and you'll probably already discover this, and it gets more as time goes on. But your kids teach you so much about yourself. Like, they'll expose all your defects of character. They'll be picking up on them, and you have to self-reflect. And also, then you'll see your behaviours in them, and you'll be like, "Do I do that?" You know, it's like, "Oh shit, I didn't realise." Like, so you start to see, and you know, they're seeing themselves in you, and you're seeing yourself in them, and like, it's fucking intense. Let's face it. It's intense, and it's a lot of pressure.
And that's I think another reason that factored into the self-reflection side of things, and going like, okay, I've got to work on a few more things, because, yeah, like you said, you're dealing with this tiny person that is exposing these things.
Exposed.
And especially like now, these, like, I've noticed even now 2 years into it, like, I'm still sort of fresh into it, but like, they say, like, you know, those first 4 years, you know, little kids are regulating their emotion on you and how they deal with things. So if that's going to be the foundation that sets them up moving forward. So if you're not giving a child or someone like that a positive in reinforcement and, like, environment, then it's going to negatively impact them for years.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see that until it's too late.
Dude, I mean, it's hard to hear, but it's true. It's true.
It makes me look back. Like, I won't lie. Like, I had for the most part, like, outside of a few things here and there, like, in terms of my actual childhood, and when it comes down to, like, my parents and what they always did what's best, like, try to give us the best quality of life, like I said, and you know, with us moving overseas and doing all that sort of stuff, and they've always done the best for me and my brother. But, you know, if I look back at my childhood, I had a great childhood, but I look back at some things throughout my childhood, and I was like, that I think about now, and I'm like, did that shape or affect things that have led to, like, now? Has that factor in? Yeah. Or have I done something already in the 2 years that I've been a dad now that's going to affect her when she's like, is she going to be 28 and sitting there going?
But you can't do that to yourself as a parent. You'll go insane.
You'd go crazy.
Yeah, it's big. You know, I went through periods of doing that, and it's very easy to fall into this parental guilt. I know every parent experiences it. Like, but the reality is, the kids need to see your flaws as well. You know, because it's all learning for them, and they're about to enter a very difficult world, and you know, unfortunately, you know, like. So you can't beat yourself up when you do mess up around your kids, because it's a learning experience for them in the end, and they're going to experience harsh shit in the real world anyway.
Especially, and you know yourself, especially if you being a little girl that's going to transition through. Like, I listen to you read things, you listen to things, and you just think back to your own childhood. You see, like, how you look at, like, how little girls are bullied, and, like, it's ruthless.
Oh, dude, I'm a high school teacher. I see, like, man,
I mean, it's
We have most issues with teenage girls more than boys.
It terrifies me.
And the bullying, cyberbullying, the bitching, the ganging up in groups against one girl. Like it's
terrifying.
It is. As a father who's so protective, you're just innately protective of them. You want to wrap them in cotton wool, but you can't. They're on their journey. But one thing I do know is that whatever boyfriend they get or partner they choose to get, they're going to model it off they're going to model their partner generally off their father and the type of person they were. You know, when I heard that and realized that, it's like, well, that's all the motivation I need to be the best person I can be. You know, because they're going to model their future partner off that.
Yeah.
You know, so there's something to think about too.
Yeah, it's that combination of, you know, setting that example, but then also I found, and what we've already sort of always been big on, is just letting her be her own little person.
Yes.
Set up her own boundaries. Like, because I think back to my childhood and stuff too, and I think about certain things. Like, my parents never forced me to do anything, and even interactions with people, like family members, friends, or just strangers. Anything. My parents never would just be like, there's an adult trying to interact with you. Interact with them.
Gotcha.
You know, there's always I always had, like, my parents were always big on that too, and
they sound epic.
You know, trying to do that, like, you just have to let them be their own person, set their own boundaries. Like, it's important.
Yeah.
And then it comes back to, like you said, about which we all try and do. I think people just do. It comes back to the thing about trying to, like, people please and it comes back to that. We all do it.
We do.
But some people do it less. Some people are able to shut it down faster.
Yes, sir.
And I think it comes back to that. It comes back to those early experiences.
100%. And as a parent, I think it's progress, not perfection. You know, you don't try to be perfect as a parent. You're not going to be perfect. But you can, every day, just try and be a little bit better. But that's what you do anyway with your training and the life you lead, bro. So...
Yep. And every day it's like adversity. So that's the thing.
Dude, every time you step in that gym, it's adversity. It really is. Well, listen, man, it's been epic, dude. I'm so grateful for you and your time and the messages that you're putting out there. And listen, one last thing is I ask all guests to come to the podcast with a cause they want to support or advocate for. So what do you got for us today?
I reckon, well, for me, one that sort of touches close is the White Ribbon Australia Foundation, obviously dealing with, like, domestic violence and that sort of stuff, and the aspects of that and impact that has, which is amplified because of my mum works in family law, so the stories and the stuff I hear and directly, you know, like from her experiences and the statistics and the stuff that I get told, and obviously, you know, when I'm having conversations with Sarah about some of the stuff that she's studied and looked into through her uni stuff and being exposed to, and it's just crazy. And I feel like if there's more that we can do in that avenue, then that's important, because, you know, 99% of the time too, when you have these issues with domestic violence and stuff like that, there's children involved and being exposed to that too. So that just terrifies me. And I think about, like we sort of said, like, I mean, I'm raising a daughter, and I just think, I mean, like, what if you think about things like, what if that's the situation where your daughter's involved in with something like that? And so if there's a way that we can fund or work towards that and improving that, obviously that's something I'm always going to sort of want to campaign for.
Awesome. And awareness is growing, you know, through these kind of initiatives. So thanks again for raising more awareness, and we'll continue to do so. I'll put a link to the White Ribbon Foundation website, and you can get on there. You might be able to find information that's helpful for you. You might be able to find ways that you can be involved or volunteer. And at the very least, there's always, you know, probably a donation, opportunity on there as well. So I'll put a link to that in this episode's show notes, and you can find this episode on all the major platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Overcast, iHeartRadio. But whatever platform you like to listen to this podcast on, it always helps if you follow, subscribe, and you get notified as to when the next weekly episode is going to be released. So yeah, anyway, man, Justin Van Heerden, legend. Thank you for being on. Do you want to end on anything? You got anything else you want to say?
Thanks for having me on. I always like opportunities like this where I can, you know, talk and engage with people and have these sort of authentic and organic, I guess, conversations and stuff like that. Because you never know which you don't. It's not like you're coming in with like a set list of things that you're going to talk about and stuff like that, and then you don't.
I'm not an MMA podcast either, because I've had a few MMA fighters on now, and I had a listener write to me, "Oh, you an MMA podcast now?" I'm like, no, I'm not. I just find these athletes very interesting humans. The more I meet them, the more I get to know them. You are.
And you don't know how, like, and that's what I like about doing stuff like this. You don't know how things are going to go. You don't know how it's just organic and it's going to generate its own thing. And you're always going to get something out of it regardless.
Yeah, all that shit you were saying about growing up in South Africa, like, that's full on. Like, I think it's a good reminder for the average Australian who was born in a very safe, environment of Australia generally. We don't realise how lucky we are, but you've come in from that to this, and you can see it for what it is, and you can be really grateful for it. Whereas I think people need to be reminded, hey, listen, be grateful for where you've been blessed to be born, because it could be a hell of a lot worse, right?
100%. And Australia's by far the greatest place ever.
Everyone said it is, dude. It really is. All right, man. Let's go and enjoy the day. You.